All right. Good evening, guys. It's 3 a.m. or quarter to 3 on the East Coast here, so it's a late show. But for my regular viewing audience, this is kind of par for the course. You guys know I do a lot of evening shows just because my hours are pretty backwards. But I just was kind of bored, and I figured I'd go live and see if we could get a couple people to come by and maybe have some fellowship and discussions. And if not, I won't keep you guys very long. I won't make this a very long stream. I'll probably keep it half hour if nobody comes by, and I'll just kind of give my thoughts on a couple topics. Maybe also, I might review a video or two. What's going on, Pete? Feel free to hit the link. Haven't seen you in a while. I'd like to catch up with you, man. Hear what you've been up to, and what's new. Good to see you, bro. Me and Pete actually we don't agree on certain topics, so it's good when I conversate with people that I don't agree with all the time because it helps me learn where they're coming from. But I always learn something, and I like Pete too. So yeah, Pete, if you want to come by, hit the link. Feel free if you're bored. That's kind of why I'm doing this. I was just bored. So there's no specific topic at the moment. That's a good question. It's over any human being's head too. I'm sure you might have a verse in mind, and maybe you can pull a verse out to show that the Bible already answers that question. But just from a philosophical standpoint, when does Christ become the author of eternal salvation? I'd say before the foundation of the world. I'm sure certain scriptures kind of will lean in that direction, or might even verbatim say that, because if I'm trying to think from the Bible where that's answered, Hebrews 5, 8, 10. Okay, let's check it out. But from a philosophical sense, yeah, I mean, just before the world was even created, I'd say, Jesus, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, they had a plan. But KJV, yeah, I usually use the ESV, but I'll check it out in both. I have no problem checking it out in both. Um, just give me a minute, Pete. I gotta pull up the blue letter. Hebrews. It's taking a minute. Bear with me. All right, what did you say? Hebrews 5, 8? Okay, let's check it out. See what you got here for us, Pete. Put me on the spot with the question, so hopefully my answer is not too far off from what Hebrews 5, 8 is going to say here. My computer's being difficult at the moment. Bear with me, guys. Let me type it in like this. Technical issues. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. Being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all that obey him. Okay. So, no, it isn't. ESV, I think, is better than the King James, to be honest. ESV doesn't leave much out. I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about that one Matthew verse that, has a footnote, and because it's in another gospel. That's like the only thing that comes to mind when you're talking about the ESV leaves stuff out. Like there's like one Matthew verse is left out. Oh, you'd have to give me more of a rundown, but regardless, the ESV is very similar to the King James. It's close to the King James. I don't like the King James. I mean, I could show you a few issues right off the top of my head in the King James. I mean, all the translations have issues, so it's not hard to show you. Go right where you're at here. I could go to Hebrews chapter back 4:8 and show you an error in the King James where it mistranslates, puts Jesus' name when it's supposed to mean Joshua. But yeah, I'm kind of missing your point here, Pete. That's why it'd be better if you were up here, because you could actually talk and explain what you mean by, bringing us here to show us, when Christ is the author of eternal salvation. So you're saying my answer was wrong according to this scripture because he learned it by obedience by the things which he suffered. See, I don't know if that's your point here. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered, being made perfect. He became. See, I don't know. He learned obedience by the things he suffered. I'd have to read more about this because I don't think Jesus needed to go through that to learn obedience to the Father. I think he was obedient to the Father since he was created before he was in the flesh. So also Christ glorified of God as Messiah. So also Christ glorified not himself to be made a high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today that I have begotten thee. All right. Sorry, guys. As he saith also in another place, Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. When the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience. See, this is a problem I have with the King James too, is I don't understand why people prefer the Old English, because yeah, we kind of read this and we kind of just skip over it. Like, okay, we can kind of put these words in order, yet learned he obedience. But the problem is, this is their vernacular. And when you put it into a different translation, it can be saying a totally different thing than what you think it says. So I want to check this in another translation too. I can look at it a bunch, but I want to see what it says in the ESV. Because that he is kind of confusing. But yeah, see, the ESV copies it, pretty similarly. They just put the words in a different order. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. But yeah, Pete, just, because you don't like the ESV, I'll just show you in the King James. If I just go back one chapter from where you brought me, Hebrews 5:8, and I go to Hebrews 4:8, the King James right here says Jesus, but this is supposed to be Joshua. But it's translating the Hebrew word Yeshua, which is the same Jesus and Joshua, but they went with Jesus when they should have went with Joshua, because it says here, for if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? Yeah, it's obvious that speaking of another day is referring to Jesus, because Jesus is the one that actually gives rest. So it's supposed to be Joshua here in the King James. So yeah, I mean, I could show you in the ESV, they correct it to Joshua, and most translations correct it to Joshua in Hebrews 4:8. So there's a blatant error right there in the King James that you should, be aware of. So there's no perfect translation. If you don't like the ESV, that's your choice. You can choose whatever translation you want, but see how the ESV has this correct to Joshua. I prefer the ESV because I don't speak the King's English, so there's a lot of words in the King James that I think I just would be guessing about, and I don't know what they mean, and there's a lot of issues with that. You because I could just make up a word, jammy wham, and then I'll say, I went to the mall and I bought a jammy wham and it fit me nicely. And people will just all of a sudden say, well, jammy wham is some sort of clothes. Because the sentence I said, I went to the mall and I bought a jammy wham and it fit me nicely. Because people understand every other word in that sentence. Yet the problem is jammy wham doesn't mean clothes, because it doesn't mean anything. It's just a word I just made up 5 seconds ago. It's a word that doesn't even exist. Yet people are gonna read. If I wrote that in a sentence, I guarantee most people that read that, if I put it on the internet and they had to answer what is a jammy wham, they're gonna say a jammy wham's clothes. But that's what happens in the King James. People will see a word surrounded by a bunch of other words that they do know, and they're always going to guess what the word means. And often they're going to be wrong from what the word actually means, especially when you go and you Google and you look what these words actually mean. So if you're comfortable with the King James, you've read it for years, you've done a lot of due diligence, you like it because of the poetic beauty, you're aware where there's some issues or errors, but you are well studied in the words, or when you don't know a word, every time you don't know it, you Google it to try to learn it and get the verse right, then that's fine. But to me, that's a lot of extra work, and that's why I prefer the ESV. I think it's a lot easier to be able to read it. I remember the first time I went to the NIV from the ESV, no, excuse me, from the King James, because the very first Bible I had read at all was the King James. And I was struggling with some of it because I didn't know the words, and it just, the way it read, was slower. And I've read an NIV, and I was like, oh, wow, this is so much easier to understand. I could read through these verses quickly. I'm actually understanding these things. It's just much easier of an experience. And then as I grew in my, academic aspect of the study, I realized that, well, the NIV is more of a thought for thought translation, and I wanted more of a literal word for word translation. So the ESV is more accurate word for word than even the King James. And, not by a lot, but it is more accurate word for word than the King James. So, but just being more accurate word for word doesn't make it a better translation. The NASB is the most accurate word for word translation, but it's that's what you'll see if you click on the interlinear. It's going to use the NASB just because of that. But that doesn't make it the best translation just because it's the most accurate word for word either. So I'm not saying the ESV is better than the King James because it's slightly more accurate word for word. They're very close too. It's not like a significant difference. Thought for thought is just as important as word for word. You need to understand what the word means in the context to get it. In Hebrew especially, there's a ton of words that you need to know the meaning, because the Hebrew words have 20 different meanings. I mean, just like our words today, words can have several meanings, but in Hebrew it's even more so, because language is only 8 to 10,000 words essentially, and the words have 20 different meanings and all sorts of idioms. Yeah, I'll Google it. I'll take a look at that. I can't click on your link in the comment, Pete. I can't click on it from StreamYard. I'd have to go on. What do you want me to look up though? Sorry, I wasn't keeping up with what you were saying. Look up Luke 17:36 in the ESV. Okay, Pete wants me to look up Luke 17:36 in the ESV. So let me look up Luke 17:36. See what you want me to see here. Temptations to sin. Okay. Yeah, I mean, in the blue letter it has footnotes, and it says some Greek manuscripts exclude this verse. The ESV related footnote 1735 states some manuscripts add verse 36. 2 men will be left in the field, one will be taken, and the other left. Okay, so right there you see, Pete, that some manuscripts exclude this verse. So the people that are, making the ESV translation are making a choice, obviously, to exclude it because some manuscripts don't have it. So maybe the verse isn't supposed to be there. No, you don't know Pete. You see, what you're saying is a logical fallacy right now. See, the ESV just showed me what was missing. But what you're saying is a logical fallacy. How can you say that the KJV has all the verses when there was thousands of manuscripts of the New Testament? Have you ever Googled how many manuscripts there are of the New Testament? just for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels themselves, there's thousands of manuscripts. So there's not one version of Matthew. There's not one version of Mark. There's not one version of Luke or John either. So the fact that the ESV is choosing to omit that verse, and then the footnote says because some manuscripts don't have this verse, it's because the scholars that put the ESV together don't think that verse is accurate. They didn't think it was accurate, but they did put a footnote in there to tell you that, this is the verse that's in other manuscripts. So you can't just say the King James has all the verses, because it can't. It can't have all the verses, because certain manuscripts are going to have different verses. So the King James had to make a choice on Matthew. It had to make a choice on Mark, Luke, and John too. It can't have all the verses, because it can't have all the manuscripts variations in one translation. It's impossible. So you just have this in your head, this logical fallacy. But if you logically think about it, what I just said will debunk what you said. It's impossible, because there's manuscript variants. You understand? I'll give you an example. In some manuscript, in some versions of Matthew, it says Zechariah, son of Berechiah. Hold on. When Jesus is speaking about the Pharisees and how they're going to be like their forefathers who killed somebody. All right. Matthew 23. Excuse me. Where is it? First of all, the Berechiah is incorrect, but some manuscripts of Matthew include it. So Matthew 23:35. All right, so let's go to that. Because you're saying the King James has all the verses, but you're not hearing what I'm saying, I don't think, or maybe you haven't thought about it. All right, so here we are. Matthew 23:35. So right here, Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees. Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. See, right here, the ESV included son of Berechiah, and so do pretty much all the New Testament manuscripts. However, I don't think this is a good thing, because some manuscripts don't have Berechiah. So you see right here in the footnote, some manuscripts don't have Berechiah. The reason it's not a good choice by whoever chose to add it into the translations is because if you look back into 2 Chronicles 24, the Zechariah that was killed between the altar is actually the son of Jehoiada, the priest Jehoiada's son. So the priest Jehoiada, he raised King Joash from basically 7 years old on. And then what's going on, Chris? And then when the priest Jehoiada died, Joash started getting into treachery. So we see it right here. So right here in verse 20, we see it. Then the spirit, and this is the Zechariah most likely, and I can't say definite, but this is most likely the Zechariah that was killed that Jesus was talking about to the Pharisees. Then the Spirit of God clothed Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada the priest, and he stood above the people and said to them, Thus says God. And look right here, the Spirit of God is literally on Zechariah when they kill him. The Spirit of God clothed Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada the priest, and he stood above the people and said to them, Thus says God, why do you break the commandments of the Lord so that you can't prosper? Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you. But they conspired against him, and by command of the king, they stoned him with stones in the court of the house of the Lord. Thus, Joash the king did not remember the kindness that Jehoiada, that's Zechariah's dad, Zechariah's father, had shown him, but killed his son. And when he was dying, he said, May the Lord see and avenge. So this Zechariah is most likely the one that Jesus is telling the Pharisees was killed between the altar, is most likely the son of Jehoiada, the priest. So when it says son of Berechiah, and some manuscripts don't have it, the manuscripts of Matthew that don't have it are actually doing a correct omission. So the logic that including everything makes it more accurate is a logical fallacy. Chris posted a good link from Inspiring Philosophy. So I encourage people, if you're curious about a possible explanation for why some manuscripts have this, Chris posted a link from Inspiring Philosophy that was actually pretty good, because it said that a common Jewish tradition would be to associate somebody with the same name, like the name Zechariah, with other righteous people who had done things in the the same context. So this Zechariah, son of Berechiah, is the prophet who the book of Zechariah in the Bible is named after. But he exists during the rebuilding of the temple. So there's not even a temple. He's in the Babylonian time frame, maybe Persian time frame. Just I'm not perfect on Zechariah. I know he's hundreds of years after this Zechariah got killed by the altar. I know Zechariah is existing when there is no temple, so he can't get killed by the altar. So if the Jewish people, because of their tradition, decided to use this phrase "son of Berechiah," it's because they used to associate anybody with the same name, Zechariah, with another righteous person. But it's misleading to us 2,300 years later, because some of us would read this and think he's literally talking about the prophet Zechariah, who the Bible's named after. So to me, when I see a footnote here and it says some manuscripts omit the son of Berechiah, for us, I think our modern day translators would be doing us a service of not having Berechiah here, because we're not in the Jewish culture, so we didn't have that tradition of associating. If my name's Ryan and there's another Ryan that did something, but we both are like supposedly considered great in our culture, it's not good that they're going to say Ryan, son of Tony, when my dad's name was John, especially for us trying to sort through it thousands of years later. So it's a logical fallacy to say, including things always means it's better. But not only that, you're missing my point. There's thousands of manuscripts. So one version doesn't matter if it's King James, NASB, ESV, they can't include all the translations, because different manuscripts are going to have different versions of the same verses. So I don't know if you're understanding my point there, but it's logic. It's just plain logic. All right. So let's see what Pete's been saying while I've been talking. What about the King James getting Hebrews 4:8 wrong? That was that. Are you missing the point? I showed you that the King James is the one that said Jesus in Hebrews 4:8. Oh God, yeah. I mean, don't get me started on because every translation has issues, Pete. So I don't know why you're trying to. Are you a King James only, Pete? And you think King James is the perfect word or something? Because it's not, and it's from 1611. So if you want to be logical, don't you think in the last 400 years we've had some sort of like improvements in our exegesis of the Bible, and we've learned a few things? That's terrible. That's not something good. I'll show you something that's bad in the King James. I mean, I just showed you in Hebrews 4:8. It's bad to put Jesus' name in Hebrews 4:8 instead of Joshua. I mean, that's not just bad, that's like terrible. But it's understandable because Yeshua is the same word in Hebrew. So, but you have Jesus in this verse. For if Jesus had given them rest, so Jesus isn't capable of giving them rest, Pete? I mean, is that really logical? For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? Well, what's the other day then, Pete? What's the other day after Jesus Christ then? Think about this verse and tell me how it makes any sense in the world if it's Jesus. It makes no sense. The King James people just translated Joshua to Jesus because Yeshua is the same thing in Hebrew. But yeah, also in Daniel 8:14 it says days instead of evenings and mornings. That's a mistranslation in the King James, and it misleads people. But this is like a really bad one, and it's something that I think people really should put a lot of weight into. In Revelation, the angels, they don't accept worship because they say worship God. All right, but right here, even in the ESV, they made a poor translation choice. I mean, yes, the Hebrew word proselyte does mean to worship sometimes, for sure. It's the same word used for God sometimes, to bow down and worship God. But like, I don't agree with the ESV or the King James in this verse. Oh no, excuse me. Never mind. Never mind. Never mind. I'm taking this one wrong. Let me say this correctly. The ESV is correct in the way they're using this. But just to point out, then I fell down at his feet to worship him, but he said to me, "You must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers. Hold to the testimony of Jesus, worship God." So my point is this: to show you an angel's not accepting worship when John falls down at his feet. So it's the same Greek word here, proselyte, that's being used for worship. But if you go to Revelation 3, what you see is in the King James, it's going to say that Jesus instructs people to bow down and worship an angel, when really what Jesus is doing is telling the people to bow down to the angel. He's not saying worship the angel. He's saying like bow at their feet, like in submission, like won't be able to conquer him. Jesus is, making the angel superior to him, but he's not. Jesus isn't telling anybody to bow down and worship anybody besides God, let alone bow down and worship an angel. So let me find this verse. Maybe it's in Revelation 2. I haven't gone through this in a while because it's been a minute since I've bothered with this. But King James has it as Jesus saying bow down and worship an angel, which makes no sense because Jesus is never going to tell you to worship anybody but God. The angel himself in the verse in 19:10 I just showed you won't accept worship. I think it's in chapter 3, but let me check chapter 2. It's either 2 or 3. It's been a while. Hebrew Israelites use this to try to act like, they're going to get worship. So it just shows. Give me a minute here, guys. It's hard because I'm not really reading it. I'm just like skimming it really fast while I'm talking. All right, let me find this. It's synagogue. It's those who call themselves Jews but are not. Let me just Google it. It's either 2 or 3.
Was it in Revelation 2:8?
Probably. It's the one that says you call yourself Jews but are not.
Oh, that one.
The synagogue of Satan one. Not 2:8. It's right around 2. Hold on.
3:9. 3:9.
Yeah, you're right. 2:9 here. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say they are Jews are not, but are not. But
that's
are
you because you keep the Sabbath.
Yeah, right. But do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear. The one who conquers will not be hurt. Yeah, but see, I think it's in chapter 3 because I got to find it where
what do you
Jesus. Jesus is telling him to bow down. I should just go to the proselyte.
So on the verse on the screen right there, the Revelation 2:1 there. How do you understand that first phrase? Or it said, to the angel of the church of Sardis. Who's talking to who there?
I'd have to look at it.
I think it's just Jesus talking to an angel. That's the
I
messenger
think so.
to the church.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, sorry, I said proselyte before. I meant proskino. This is the Greek word I meant, not proselyte. It's proskino. It means to worship, sometimes to bow down. But yeah, I should have just gone.
Prostrate comes from that word, probably. Prostrate.
Yes, yeah, that too. Yeah. So then
what about Joshua 5 though? Because he actually prostrates himself, and he's like, "What does my Lord want?"
All right, it is Revelation 3:9. See, I knew it was Revelation 3:9.
I said 3:9.
Yeah, I said it originally too, but I was skimming so hard that I missed it. But so look here in the ESV, they translate it properly, and they make proskino mean bow down. But if you look in the King James, Pete, this is going to say worship. So you have Jesus Christ telling an angel that he's going to have people worship before their feet. This is in the kingdom of heaven. He's going to have somebody worshiping an angel in the kingdom of heaven, or is he going to have them bow down at their feet, Pete? So that's what I'm saying. If you look at this in the King James, Revelation 3:9, it's going to say worship. So you have Jesus Christ saying that he's going to make people worship. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. So these are the Jews that aren't Jews, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come to worship before thy feet. And to know that
thy feet, not your feet. Oh man, I guess the King James Bible corrects the original language and worship. We're gonna have to worship people, I guess, according to Jesus.
Yeah. Jesus is gonna have fake Jews worshiping angels, but then again, Revelation itself logically contradicts this by showing in Revelation 19:10 the angel denying worship from John, saying, "No, don't bow down at my feet, worship God." So right here we see the angel again in Revelation 19:10 when John falls down at his feet saying, "You must not do that."
With emphasis.
Yeah, with an exclamation point. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God. And then you go to Revelation 22:8 and it's the same thing. So twice in Revelation we see John bow down to an angel and the angel not accept the worship. So you're going to tell me in chapter 3, Jesus is, look, again, I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. So when I heard and saw them, I fell down to worship at the feet of an angel who showed them to me. But he said to me, same thing as Revelation 19, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers, the prophets, with those who keep the words of this book, worship God. So this angel understands that people aren't supposed to worship him, but Jesus is confused and sends people to worship an angel in heaven.
What's the next couple verses say? I forget. Like verse 11.
Okay, hold on. But Pete, that's why you can't be sitting here telling me the King James is this perfect. Sorry, you can't be.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I'll show you. You can't be sitting here telling me this King James is this perfect, infallible translation. But I just showed you it has an error in Hebrews and it has,
Oh, look at verse 14. Wow.
Worship. Pete, it doesn't say bow down in King James. It says worship in King James. Bow down is the correct translation of the word. Jesus telling the fake Jews to bow down, it is correct. That doesn't mean worship. Bowing down is Jesus saying,
your KJV says worship. It's a bad translation. Bow down is less than worship.
Yeah, exactly. ESV says bow down. The King James says worship. And I've talked to Hebrew Israelites, and that's what really put me onto this verse because they said, well, you're going to be worshiping me.
I wouldn't take that so literally anyway, but to be honest, but I think it's they'll be lesser than that. Those people are lesser than you. It doesn't have to literally mean there's going to be people that are in the millennium bowing down to you. Like it's saying they'll be made low. I mean, maybe.
Worship can easily be misconstrued at minimum, and it really isn't the best choice of the translation of the word proskino, which can mean bow down, worship.
The problem is, I think the original language, especially when you cross-reference it with the LXX, the Septuagint, and you look at some of these words, it is a bit ambiguous, or there isn't like a. I mean, don't misunderstand me. I agree with what you're saying. I remember watching a debate with like a Protestant debating an Orthodox on whether or not icons. You know about that? They like have icons in their churches that they like treat with high regard, and Protestants have always kind of said that broke the commandment about idols or whatever. And they when you listen to them debate and they talk about this exact issue, it is a little bit ambiguous, but I think the principle can be derived from Scripture, obviously.
So yeah, the logic later in Revelation where an angel's not accepting worship is what really drives.
Yeah, that's what's obvious.
Right. It's the same. It's the same word, proskino. It's the same exact word.
So right. In this case, yeah, for sure.
The angel's saying, don't worship
me. What about Joshua 5? I'm just curious what you can find in that.
What do you mean, Joshua 5?
Well, whether or not what word is there and what the LXX would translate that word is in Joshua 5, because that's when Joshua meets the angel with the flaming sword, and he's like, "Are you for us or against us?" And he's like, "Neither. I'm for blah blah blah." And then he's like, then Joshua gets down and he bows down, or he goes on his face or whatever, and the angel says, "Take off your shoes." He doesn't say don't do that. He just says, "Take off your shoes."
Yeah.
I wonder what that word is.
What verse is that?
I think it's Joshua. Yeah, just keep going down. I'll
I know this occurs. I know what you're talking about. It
must be towards the
angel with the sword while they're going into.
Let's say it's a little bit further.
Israel. Yeah, it's like begins a chapter right here. The commander of the Lord's army. And when Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. See, what I've always had a problem with trying to make this Jesus too is the fact that it has a drawn sword. Because I don't know. It's like we've never had Jesus on earth, like, with a sword or a weapon. So it's like, I don't know. It kind of contradicts.
Well, he says, "Are you with us or for our adversaries?" And he says, "Neither." So he's not there to do battle in that sense.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's impossible that it could be Jesus. It's just like that's kind of what's kept me from taking this next step to call it Jesus. Because
look at that worship. He worships though, and the angel doesn't stop him. He says, "Take off your shoes. It's holy ground."
Yeah, and Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come." And I mean, if anybody fits the category of the commander of the army of the Lord, it's Jesus also. So now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say?" But it also could be Michael too.
It is Michael.
The archangel.
It's that commander of the army of the Lord.
I know you interchangeably use angel of the Lord and Jesus, but I'm not there yet.
Okay, I think this is Michael because it is Jesus, but I know you don't agree. But this phrase right here in particular, commander, that phrase in the original language is only in one other place, and it's in Daniel 8.
Daniel 12, right? Seems like Michael's obviously talking about Jesus, but it's like the Hebrew. What does Michael mean again? It means like God.
You can translate it a few ways. You could translate it like a question, like "Who is like God?" ? Of course, there's no punctuation in the original. Or you could translate it "Who is like God?" or the one who is like God is, the one who is like God is, or the one who is as God is, or who is like God? ? All of those are proper translations.
See, some translations here have "or paid homage." So I think we should definitely be careful with how we take this and worshipped, because I see paid homage, but he's definitely fallen on his face. The problem is too, like, King David and other kings are accepting people bowing at their feet too. So it's almost like it's not till the New Testament where we get Peter won't accept worship from Cornelius. So like in Acts 10, Peter tells Cornelius to stand up too. So,
I would look at when it says particularly that they fall on their face down. That's usually a kind of an indicator of severe or like high regard or whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to this Joshua. I just want to show people quick in Acts when Cornelius bows to Peter, that Peter won't accept it too. Just so right here in Acts 10:25, when Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. but Peter lifted him up, saying, "Stand up, I too am a man." So this is just another example of this topic of the angels not accepting worship in Revelation and Peter not accepting worship from Cornelius.
You know what I think? You know what I bet, Ryan?
Ryan,
I bet you the words are sometimes the same thing, but they're translated differently. And the worship is probably used particularly when there's the context shows something like when they reject it in particular. They probably, some translations probably put worship because it's clear by the implication that that's the problem going on. It looks like worship, and he's like, "Don't do that." And the
When
probably
Peter
saw that was
Peter
the same
says,
word.
"Don't do it." Yeah, it's showing that it should mean. Yeah, I know what you're saying because Peter's saying don't do that. That means Cornelius was worshiping him, but because it's the same word in Revelation here, proskino. So, but yeah, to go back to Joshua, I just wanted to show the Cornelius example too because that's part of it in the New Testament. So in the New Testament, they definitely don't accept it, but also here I can go to like David accepting people bowing down at his feet, and even some of the prophets, the old prophets like Samuel, I believe will accept people bowing at their feet. So
it's tricky too because
it's tricky. I want to see what this word is here.
They're like they speak for the Lord, or David's like a type of Jesus. But even then, I think it's confusing.
Pete, if you're still here, hit the link, man. I mean, it's a lot easier to have a conversation. I'm not trying to ignore you in the chat. It's just hard to keep up with your comments while I'm having a conversation up here with Jamie and talking. And
I did want to say, Ryan, that the reason I do not accept the King James Version as the perfect Word of God all started when I realized that in Daniel 8 that the 2300 days should be translated evening mornings because if the fact that they put days instead of evening mornings, when you get to that verse at the end of the chapter 27, you can't tell that the Mare, which is the 70 weeks, is associated with the 2300 days. That makes it difficult to see how the 2300 days has to be longer than the 490 years, because you don't realize that the evening and mornings is referring back to the 2300, which proves my point.
Well, I watched your short video, 8-minute video earlier, and I can say that I don't know exactly what the 2300 evenings and mornings, because if you go down to the verse that's like 8 verses down where it mentions evenings and mornings, and then it says the vision won't take place for many days, that is the yomim word that could mean years, does mean years in most cases.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's just saying look, that's for later sort of idea.
But I'm still not there yet because I don't understand exactly what's being said is going to happen. So I can't
okay, but
I can't make a decision one way or the other.
But think about
this. The only thing I was addressing is what's actually there, because that's all I can go on right now, and that's where
I tried to make it succinct in that video. The point is the Mare ends up being the 70 weeks, which are the 490 years. And because he gets the explanation in Daniel 9. It says, the angel says it twice. I've come to make you understand it. And then he explains the Mare, which is the 70 weeks. But the Mare is of the evenings and mornings. And the only evenings and mornings that could be talking about is the 2300. So that means that 70 weeks is a part of the 2300 days, not because it's associated with the Chazon alone, which is a reason to think that, but also because it's of the evenings and mornings, which is the 2300, which means the 2300 has to be longer than 490 years, unless you want to reject the 70 weeks or 490 years that prove Jesus is the Messiah. Of course, you could do that, I guess.
But my problem is if it's pushing it 2,300 years because that's what your claim is. Why is it pushing it that far? And what is our evidence that in 1844 something happened? What is our earthly evidence that something happened? Do we have any earthly physical evidence that something happened?
Yeah, Revelation 10 happened.
What
Revelation 10 happened. It's prophesied.
In 1844?
Yeah, when the great disappointments in Revelation 10.
No, it is. No, I'm being serious.
Read it.
Bro, don't be sarcastic right now because I'm asking.
Okay, look, I'm saying people have thought that. I'm just gonna say it makes sense to me, but I'm not gonna push it on you.
So if you're being serious, I'll hear you out here. I don't know if you're being sarcastic.
Well, go. Yeah, I'll just show you. I'm
Are
not.
you being
I'm
serious
skeptical.
saying
I'm
that
serious, but I'm skeptical of it. But I'm serious. Yes.
So you're being serious that you think the Great Disappointment is being described
could be interpreted from the symbol in Revelation 10. Could
you are seriously saying that? Okay, show
well,
me.
I'm saying it makes sense, and Adventists have said that in the past. I don't really hear them say it ever anymore.
From hold on though. I want you to think, because the problem I have with a lot of people when they interpret Revelation, especially Americans, is they think Revelation is just this American prophecy. Like from a global perspective, from think about Israel being the primary concentration of the entire Bible. Did anything happen in Israel? Did anything happen in Africa?
There was nothing in Israel regarding the covenant people of any kind.
Okay, anything happened in Europe? Anything happened in South America?
Well, the Great Disappointment was spread through the like it's a well-known historical period called the Great Awakening, where people were coming back to Scripture after America was settled, and that was also happened in Europe. And the Great Disappointment occurred during the later half of the second part of the Great
First, show me what you think could possibly
right there, right from the beginning. Verse
I
2.
saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, with a rainbow over his head, and his face was like the sun, and his legs
maybe that's the wrong verse. Scroll down, let me look at it. I forget.
He had a little scroll open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, and called out with a loud voice like a lion roaring. When he called out, the seven thunders sounded. And when the seven thunders
no, that's not it. Keep going down. It's further down.
I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Seal up what the seven thunders have
said."
Yeah,
there, verse 8.
Do not write it down.
Keep going. Past verse 8.
All right, I know. I'm just trying to get the context. And the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land, raised his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and what is in it,
verse 9.
The earth and what is in it, and the sea what is in it, that there would be no more delay, but that in the days of the trumpet call to be sounded by the seventh angel, the mystery of God would be fulfilled.
Okay, right there. What do you think that's talking about when it talks about the delay thing? Just before what does that sound?
When I read this, that there'll be no more delay, I think immediately of an Ezekiel verse that I've read many, many times, where God says in Ezekiel, what is this proverb that they quote in the land of Israel, that the days go by and every vision isn't fulfilled? And then God says in Ezekiel that the days are near when every vision will be fulfilled. So
doesn't that sound like it's talking about the delay that is in like the end of the age, the end of the world?
Hold on, let me show you. Because
seventh trumpet, when will all the things be fulfilled? What's with the delay? It says, though he may tarry, he will come. Though he may tarry, that talks about that in several places, about how like people will say he's never going to come, and then he comes suddenly, and he takes people.
Right, let me just show you though, because this is because you asked me honestly what comes to my mind. So I'll show you. And swore by him who lives forever and ever, because this is something I used to read a lot in my Bible for whatever reason, who created heaven and what is in it, and the earth and what is in it, and the sea what is in it, that there'll be no more delay, but that in the days of the trumpet call to be sounded by the seventh angel, the mystery of God would be fulfilled, just as he announced to his servants, the prophets. So when I read that, I think of Ezekiel 12, where it says the exact words, there'll be no more delay. So, and it's talking about a proverb in Israel where the days go by and every vision isn't fulfilled. So right here it says in Ezekiel 22, Son of man, what is this proverb you have about the land of Israel, saying, the days grow long and every vision comes to nothing? Tell them, therefore, thus says the Lord, I'll put an end to this proverb, and they shall no more use this proverb in Israel, but say to them, the days are near, and the fulfillment of every vision, for there shall be no more any false vision or flattering divination within the house of Israel. So yeah, I used to have the NIV, so it was slightly different when it says the days grow long and every vision comes to nothing. In the NIV,
is it safe to say that this is talking about the end of days, like God wraps up everything he said he's going to do, and he's finishing it up?
Hold on, it's not verse 22, because verse 22 is the same in the NIV. But
do you understand that kind of notion though, that God's fulfilling all his things he said he's going to do? is in view there.
Well, in Ezekiel 12, yeah, right.
Well, both. It's like it's like the days are coming when everything that's.
Oh, here it is. Verse 25. For I am the Lord, I will speak the word that I will speak, and it will be performed. It will no longer be delayed. I knew the exact word delayed was in it, but this is in the ESV too, not just in the NIV. For I am the Lord, I will speak the word that I will speak, and it will be performed. It will no longer be delayed. But in your days, O rebellious house, I will speak the word and perform it, declares the Lord. So yeah, when I read that no delay, I thought of this Ezekiel chapter 12 verse. So that was the first thing that came to my mind, but we'll go back to Revelation. But yeah, that's good to know that in Ezekiel 12, he says, that proverb in Israel about the visions going by and nothing being fulfilled. So when I read this no more delay, it could definitely be pertaining to the fact that the visions will just be fulfilled.
But yeah, which would be like a nod to like the time of the end, or the God fulfilling all the things he said he's going to do, which he'll do, right? Obviously, he'll fulfill his promises. The things he said that would come to pass will come to pass. And that's kind of a hearkening to the idea, I would argue, as to all things being fulfilled, heaven and earth pass away sort of idea. I know you're kind of a preterist or whatever, but
I'm not a full preterist.
The standard thing is that's the standard idea, anyways. The seventh trumpet, that's a symbol in Revelation.
I don't discount that Revelation could be something that's already completed. I don't say it because I see like parts of it that are hard to make that argument for, but I do see parts of it that I can make that argument for because it's just so apocalyptic that. Do you think all these plagues are going to happen on Earth again, as they say?
I think there'll be plagues probably at the very, very end, I guess. Probably.
Because there's two sides of it. There's take it very apocalyptic and go overly preterist with how apocalyptic it is, or there's overly literal where you could take it as...
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a historicist, so I believe a lot of these things you can interpret as being fulfilled from the first coming until the second coming. So what a lot of people will say is all future. I'm like, no, that some of that stuff is historical. Look at the symbols being used, and then you can go to the literature and see.
A lot of it's Rome.
Right, but it does reach all the way down to the end, and some of it is all at the end, I would say, but it's hard to know for sure.
Yeah, I'm undecided on it. Like, I'm not saying these plagues can't happen on Earth, but I'm also very open to the idea that it's speaking in a metaphor or allegory too, because I don't know. I can see it more of a spiritual apocalyptic warning of.
So first, yeah.
Well, no, because the plagues are clearly hearkening to Exodus. It's taking us back to the state that Egypt had the Israelites in, a state of slavery, but they were in a physical slavery. So when it's talking about these plagues, it could just be a reference to that type of state of mind. It could be like a spiritual, like a spiritual state of you're getting led by Pharaoh in the spirit. You're getting led by the world in the spirit. So these
exactly. I hate when people apply them so literally. It's like, oh no, Egypt has to, or like Babylon has to be reestablished as a city so God can destroy it. It's like, no, you're missing it. Like, it's a spiritual thing. He's using the illusions of those stories from the Israelites and applying it to the fullness of the spiritual battle between Christ and Satan, or between good and evil, or between God's people and those who oppose God. It's much big. It's actually bigger when you realize it's a spiritual thing, and that they are used as an example for our. And that's why I hate dispensationalism, because they obscure that and they want to make two different people of God. It's like, no, we got pulled into God's thing. He called back the nations. Yeah. They're an example to us. Paul says that. So yeah, verse 9 is the verse they would point to.
All right, let me see. But in the days that the trumpet call to be sounded by the seventh angel, the mystery of God will be fulfilled, just as he announced to his servants, the prophets. Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me, saying, Go, take the scroll that is open in the hand of the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the little scroll. And he said to me, Take and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter. This is, again, just like Ezekiel. But in your mouth, it'll be sweet as honey, because we know Ezekiel literally did this. And I took
what do you think that suggests? The symbolism.
What?
They take this scroll, a message, right? Yeah. Eat it. It's going to seem sweet in your mouth, but you're going to swallow it, and it's going to make you sick.
It's just like Ezekiel. It's literally the same thing. Ezekiel ate the scroll, like he literally ate the scroll, and I think it's chapter 4 or 5. I don't know.
You thought it was something. It was sweet to taste, but when you ate it, it was bad. So this would be the great.
Oh no, I don't take that as eating it is bad.
Well, it makes your stomach bitter. It's like that's what makes you. It was tasted good, but it made you sick.
Ezekiel eats the scroll in Ezekiel 3, and it's the same thing. It's sweet and then bitter. So maybe the bitter part would just be the realization of knowing between good and evil, because that's like eating from the tree of knowledge of good.
That's the verse they're going to say. The scroll is meaning like this message. What is the blessed hope? Classically in Christianity, like historically, and I would argue it's obviously true, is that Jesus, Christians are supposed to be saying, get right with God. The Lord is coming back and to judge the world. Okay, and the blessed hope is that return. And you have two groups: those who receive Christ and those who hide from Him because they're afraid of the judgment. So the message that is to be preached to the world is the Great Commission: come to Christ, come to God through Christ, or perish. Okay, so they're proclaiming this symbolism. They would say is they think Jesus. They know when Jesus is coming back, and that's the message on the scroll, right? The scroll is the message to give to the world, and they tasted it because that is the hope of the Christianity, right? The return of Christ. But they made the mistake of thinking they knew when He was coming back, and so when they fully swallowed that message, it was a disappointment. In other words, that's what they would say.
Someone else ate it and it was bitter. Maybe it was Isaiah, because Ezekiel's eating it right here, and I don't see the bitter part. But so like right here, it's Ezekiel chapter 3. Son of man, eat whatever you find here. Eat this scroll. Go and speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and He gave me the scroll to eat. And He said, maybe it was Jeremiah, I don't know. Son of man, feed your belly with the scroll, and I will give you and fill your stomach with it. Then I ate it, and it was in my mouth as sweet as honey. And He said to me, son of man, go to the house of Israel and speak with my words to them. So the scrolls, giving Ezekiel the words. So let me go back to Revelation. Maybe it was Jeremiah.
Right. Well, yeah.
Somebody ate it, and it was bitter for them. Was it Daniel?
Well, yeah. See, this is the thing. The symbol is like the good message that God gives to His prophets to give to the people, right? And so that gives you the context of what the symbolism is in Revelation.
Okay,
it's a message to give to the people.
Let me check Jeremiah, because it says Jeremiah.
And when it's bitter, it just means that it was something bad about it, ends up being bad about it.
See, that's the thing. I don't know. The bad thing about it could only be to me knowing the knowledge of good and evil, because that's definitely a curse.
It could be anything. It could be anything bad. I mean, I'm just saying, what is the symbolism? How is the symbolism being employed? Forget the interpretation. It means giving a message to the people from God, and then it being a message that tastes good. And if in the Old Testament, if it doesn't go bitter, it means it was just a good message, period. It was from God to the people, and it was good. But if you add that other part, I would say that indicates that you realize something about what you thought about it wasn't what you thought it was, and so it made you realize it may have seemed good, but it's bad. Not that it's bad from God per se, but I think that kind of sets that idea.
All right, let me go back to this. Revelation 10.
You could apply it, like you said, to the garden, the thing too, I think.
Knowledge of good and evil could be the bitter aspect for sure.
That is the same sort of, that would work. That's what I'm not saying the interpretation has to be anything in particular. I'm just saying that's the idea.
Okay. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the little scroll, and he said to me, take and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but your mouth, it will be sweet as honey. And I took the little scroll from the hand of the angel and ate it. It was sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And I was told, you must again prophesy about many peoples and nations and languages and kings. So, bro, I don't know how you could read this and tie this into the great disappointment. No offense, nothing personal, but I see, it's so general how you're just like, you're eisegeting the text completely. You're just reading your own interpretation into it, in my opinion, if you tie it to the great disappointment.
I don't think I did.
Well, are you saying it has anything
I'm
to
saying
do with
Adventists used to say that, and I'm saying that is the right sort of idea. I'm not saying that is what it was put there for. It could be many things. It's not clear. I'm just saying, though, the fact is, from the context you just showed, the idea is the scroll is like a message, a word from God to the people. Okay. Something about it made them bitter, but yet, even though that happened, it's still true that you have to preach that message. That is that Christ.
So are they taking the word bitter and just saying, well, it has to do with the fact that they were disappointed that Jesus didn't come to earth? That's their whole basis for like saying that's tied to, I mean,
well, no, the context would be it's the end of the time, it's the end of the world kind of in view here, that the age is coming to an end. What message is there from God to give to the people before the end comes? That would be sweet. And then why would it be bitter if it's from God, unless you messed it up by saying it was by making an error in the way you preached it? And then so it's bitter in your stomach, but then God says, but you still have to preach that message. What's that message? The message of that's meant for the end of the age, that Christ is returning and the judgment is coming, and that people need to hear that message. All tribes, tongues, and nations, which is what we see on the Sea of Glass. So there's a lot of things you could tie into that.
I mean, you could literally tie whatever you want.
I don't know what other message we could say we know for sure of that there is to be preached to all nations in the context.
Why didn't that start when the apostles were telling everybody to worship Jesus? Why would that have to be delayed till 1844 is the question.
Well, I'm not saying there's anything about 1844 here. I'm saying the context is right before the end, because it's talking about the seventh trumpet. So we're talking about right before Christ returns.
Mike was here. Yeah, Mike, I don't know how long you were sitting there, but I can't see when I'm sharing the screen. What you guys see on the screen is what I see. So I can't see the private chat. So if you can, next time, just comment in the regular comment. If you don't,
Mike, what is the message in 10:9? What is this? What's on that scroll there that has to be prophesied after it's bitter in the stomach? You tell me.
I don't know how long Mike's been watching.
I don't know what other message there is in the context of right before Christ comes that all nations and kings and languages need to hear. What other message is there? Fear God and keep His commandments. I don't know.
Yeah,
the Advent is preached. Fear God and keep His commandments. So
yeah, just repent and worship the true God. See, a lot of people are always. I mean, I'm not going to discount the tons of scriptures talking about Christ coming back in the clouds and that type of writing, allegorical stuff. To me, it can be allegorical more than literal at times. To me, it's like, I don't know. I take a lot of it differently than you. I don't know.
Okay, here, Mike. The Protestant. This is what I'll say. I want to see what Mike says about this.
Sure.
Okay, the Protestant Reformation was a move in the right direction, putting the Word of God back into the people's hands. And it was a slow burn, but it was a move towards the right direction that needed to occur before the end of the world. And I'm going to say, what happened in 1844? Well, a group of people started to realize to get back to the Word of God, even keep the Reformation going. And then, that group became Seventh-day Adventists, and they've been preaching the Sabbath was for Christianity in the world, that it was made for man. So that's what happened. The Sabbath was brought to light worldwide through the Adventist Church.
Yeah, but Jews were keeping Sabbath forever too. So it's like, I don't know if you could just isolate it to the Sabbath became more popular. Because
believers in Messiah should keep the Sabbath. That's a message that needed to happen. Yeah,
but I'm sure there was parts of Christianity that were still doing that. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I have a hard time seeing anything in 1844 significant. And I don't personally, I know we disagree on this too. I don't think the Bible says anything about the Protestant Reformation or anything in Europe personally. I don't think it's
if you like having the Bible in your hands and you like America existing, then you like the Reformation happening.
I'm not saying historically it wasn't a good thing. It was historically a good thing because the Bible became prominent, and that's when our English translations became prominent. So I'm not saying it historically is bad. I just don't think it's like specifically prophesized or mentioned in the Bible.
Well, right, because you don't understand the symbolism in the progression of history through Daniel and how that connects to Revelation and how the dates all line up with you can't unhitch it from Jesus, because if you believe that Daniel predicted Jesus in the 70 weeks, and that you just keep going from 600 BC, one kingdom after the other, then it describes Rome, and then Rome becomes the last kingdom before Jesus comes back. But then it talks about that empire splitting into 10 heads and 7 horns or whatever, and that's exactly how many kingdoms Rome had to conquer before it gained its civil power, and the church crossed over. And that's when it said the church, there's this harlot woman, when the woman, the virgin woman, is the true church, and this other church that comes and becomes the Roman church becomes a harlot and conquers these 10 all these historical European, what become the European nations ultimately. But as soon as it defeats the last 3 historically, then that's when the church merges with the civil power in 538 AD for exactly 1260 years before she's dethroned and the Pope's thrown in the prison, and the French Revolution occurs. And then that sparks all sorts of very important historical events. So
you think the Bible in Daniel speaks about like all that stuff you just said, the Protestant Reformation, that Pope going in jail? You think the Bible prophesized about that?
Yeah, Daniel? Because it talks about a succession of kingdoms, which is Rome, is the last one it mentions. And then when you hook up Daniel 7 to Revelation 13, you look at the symbols, the beast with 10 heads and 7 horns or whatever. There was 7 people groups, like the Lombards and the Visigoths, and those kingdoms Rome overcame. And then there was like 3 that were lingering, the barbarians, which were like in the British or whatever, what became the British company, the 10 original nations or whatever of England. And that's what it describes right from the succession of kingdoms. So, I mean, and then when it conquers what the Bible describes, like those amount of kingdoms, I don't have it all in front of me, but it's exactly like the Bible said. And it's like, and then Rome, the symbolism is like obvious. The Roman church, Rome becomes the Roman church. It goes from pagan Rome to papal Rome. And sure enough, the church goes astray and says there's one bishop over all the churches, and he calls himself the vicar of Christ, and he says he speaks for Christ on earth, whatever he says. I mean, and that's exactly what it describes he would do. The one that comes out of Rome would become a harlot woman that rides the beast and sits on many waters and speaks blasphemies against the Most High. What are the blasphemies? Well, in the New Testament, Jesus' blasphemy is accused of because they say he does blasphemy because he says he can forgive sins, but he's not God, which is false because he is God. And the other blasphemy is that he makes himself equal with God, saying he's the Son of God. That's what the Pope does.
So are you saying the 2 witnesses came too?
No, I'm saying the 2 things in the New Testament that we know are what blasphemy is, and the Pope claims he can do.
Yeah, but hold on.
He claims he speaks for Christ, and that's what the Daniel 7 says the whore would do.
Yeah, but the 2 witnesses, because I'm just looking at it now, the 2 witnesses come in Revelation 11 before that 7th trumpet that we just read. So, and then the woman in the...
What does it say? For how long? 3.5 days?
I mean, I have to look at it, but I'm just saying the 2 witnesses come before the 2 witnesses.
Yeah, Moses and Elijah. Who's that? That's the law and the prophets. The 2 witnesses.
I don't know. People say Moses and Elijah, and it sounds like a pretty good answer, but we can't prove that one way.
I don't think it's literally them.
Well, we don't know. I don't know. It could be them. It sounds like a reasonable idea, but we honestly don't know.
Well, I mean, do you think John the Baptist was Elijah, literally?
Yes, me and you disagree on that also. Yes.
So you think John the Baptist was literally the spirit, the literal ghost of Elijah from Christmas past that came and reincarnated?
Yeah, because Elijah didn't die. God. So how could you say? Well, you just have to deny what Jesus said. I mean, I'm just going by what Jesus said.
If you can receive it, yes, he's.
What am I supposed to do when Jesus says, if you can accept it, Elijah has come? How else are you supposed to? Why is he prefacing it? Why would it be hard to accept at all that John the Baptist was just similar to Elijah?
Why is he called the Elijah? Why is it the definite article, like the Donald? Why is he the Donald? Because he's a symbol of the one who makes straight the paths for the Lord.
All right, we're
going. He's also the moon. He's the moon too.
We're bouncing all over the place. But my point is, I'll go back to Elijah. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm just saying I want to preface what we were just talking about, because you're saying the beast is the church, and the two witnesses come before the seventh trumpet, and this is the 1260 days too that you seem to tie into Daniel a lot. So
yeah, that would be the period of when when Rome had civil power historically, and she kept the scriptures from the people. That's how she's obscuring the new covenant, the gospel of Christ, by getting in between the people and the true message of the gospel of righteousness by faith and justification by faith. And that the Pope became the intermediator and kept the word of God from everybody and changed God's law and made his own crap and made meritorious salvation, and nobody understood what the true gospel was anymore. And so the two witnesses being dead is Moses is the law. He gave the law. Elijah is like a representation of the prophets, which is another term for the word of God. It's the message of God. His two messengers of his message, his word. Christ is the word made flesh. That was kept from the people. That message, God's communication of his message to the people of God that were hungry for and thirsty.
Mike, I don't know if you're trying to talk.
That's what I'm saying.
Mike has.
Yeah, all right. Hey, how are y'all?
Yeah, we're all right. Same old.
Good to see you, Jamie. What's up, brother? I see he's answering my question as much as he did a year and a half ago when I first met him and got his email and sent him all kinds of emails, and he never responded to those as well. I see nothing has changed. Hey, I got some good news, man. We meet every night when I go into work, our whole crew, 24 people meet for 10 minutes for our little meeting. Hey, Mike, go to dairy. Hey, Mike, go to frozen. I like that when he says, Mike, go to frozen, because I say out loud, these people don't speak English anyway, so they don't understand. But I like saying, oh, good, the frozen chosen. And yeah, you know what that means. So, but anyway, we have a 10-minute meeting, 9 minutes every night. And tonight, my black Jamaican boss with his broken English is saying stuff like, each of us has our problems. We try to get through life. Maybe somebody wants to be alone. Maybe somebody just needs to talk sometimes. So this work is very, very hard. I have to put up with my boss. He says, so we're going to do something different every night from now on. And I'm thinking to myself, great. When I was at 50th and L, we had to exercise for 20 minutes on camera. Get over here, Mike, step in front of the camera. We need to get you on camera. People watch this to make sure, people review this to make sure oh, okay. He says, we're going to do something different. It's every night and we will start tonight. We're going to start every meeting. Every night we come in, we're going to start the meeting with a prayer. And he says, well, I pray to my Father, get us through this night. Help us, give us strength, forgive us our sins. And yes, everybody go, Mike, you're in dairy tonight. And I thought to myself, wow, double wow. I was very impressed.
Yeah, you never want to underestimate people, and that's smart of him to not get too specific, because the next thing you know, somebody will complain and he'll get fired. You know how that goes. But
oh, I had one guy come up to me. There's only a couple of guys that speak English, and the one guy, hey, come here, let me ask you something. And you should have heard him giving the qualifications. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, I just want your opinion, because, you're not really, and he went on for 20 minutes giving qualifiers. And he finally came out and said, do you think he's going to get fired for this? And I said, no, I could care less. There's a high, as a worker in Walmart, there's a better chance of you getting shot by a coworker than a cop.
Yeah, that was sad. What was that at? I remember that happened at some Walmart. That was sad.
Oh, they happen all the time. It's not a criminal killing a cop or it's a cop on cop crime. You have a more chance of getting shot by a coworker at Walmart than you do. We have training videos on people coming in, and I hate them. The bullets, the gunfire is too realistic. But anyway, no, I think you're. What happened just real quick, Jamie? If the 2,300 day evenings and mornings are literally days, evening and morning oblations, but you transfer them to days for 1150, I think you ought to be looking at what happened in the year 457 BC plus 1150. That comes to like 600 something. And I don't know, that's Islam. But yes, 2300, 1844, something significant did happen in my cute little research. Yeah, good luck duplicating that. My research seems to disappear whenever I try to duplicate it.
Baha'u'llah came to light, right? The
in 694?
No, in 1844. The Baha'i faith.
Oh, in 1840.
The Baha'u'llah guy, the guy who started the Baha'i faith. They think they actually take that prophecy for that.
Oh no, I don't know what that is. No, the Pharisees reconvened. The Pharisees got back together and said, "Hey, we need to start over again." They were disbanded officially. You would think it was like 68 or 70 AD that the Pharisees and Sadducees were destroyed, but they lasted a while longer, till about 135, where they gave their final command on how to figure the calendar. They did an algorithm, and so now it's Passover is like the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox or some such nonsense. But
see, how would the Mare be part of that though?
If you understood this, because you always say, you've repeated Daniel 9:24 so many times, you're clear. 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and after 62 sevens comes Messiah, but he's cut off. But you consistently say after 69 sevens. And you don't think there's any problem with that. 7 plus 62 is 69. After 62 is going to be 7 plus 60. It's going to be after 69. And I keep telling you.
I don't forget. I know. That's there in my mind.
Yeah. So I keep trying to tell you, if they start at the same time, the 7 weeks starts at the same time, 7 weeks as the 62 weeks, 7 weeks later is going to be Messiah. But 62 weeks after that same starting point he's going to be the prince. He's not the prince. He didn't come the first time.
Is that how you do it? Is that what you're saying? Because I would just think it's linear, but
right, and that's why we.
That's your view. That's your view that the 7 starts with the 62. Is that what your view is?
Oh, absolutely, and it's
okay. That's how you do it. I never got that. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to say. If you started Jesus's baptism, as far as the 70 weeks of like weeks, not years, because we know there's both. If the Jesus' ministry of 70 weeks, he got baptized, and 7 weeks later, he's in, after going to the desert for the wilderness for 42 days, 7 weeks later, he's in, before Passover on the 10th, on the 8th, on a Sabbath, he's in the synagogue reading the Isaiah prophecy. This day is this fulfilled in your ear.
That's what the thing you were doing with him, right? Is that those weeks and the way they're broken up is significant in his 1.5 year ministry, right? In your view?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm starting to get it. I don't fully get it, but I'm kind of getting what you're saying. I mean, it seems you must have perked up when I was pointing out that the Mare is the first portion of the cosm, because that's exactly
right.
What you're doing.
That's why I'm looking at your thing yesterday, where you got your highlighted Mare and your highlighted Kazon, and that Mare to me is like more like teacher, like Jesus.
Oh, now I get what you were saying now with that.
Yeah, so if those start at the same time, you're going to have the Mare is going to come first, like whenever, 1945, in my opinion, but he's going to delay, whatever. But then the Kazon, you have to start at the same point of those starting at the same time, but then the Kazon will come later. So with starting at Jesus' baptism, 7 weeks later, he's in the synagogue in Nazareth saying he's the Messiah, or the acceptable year of the Lord, not the acceptable 3.5 years. But if he also started his baptism and goes 62 weeks, the first day of, so the 62 weeks ends on a Sabbath, and that's his triumphal entry and into Jerusalem. And so literally Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is 3 days. Wednesday is the middle of the week, the 4th day, because after Wednesday, the 4th day, is 3 more days: Thursday, Friday, and the Sabbath.
And
literally in the middle.
Crucified on.
Right. So literally in that week that came after the 62nd week, keeping in tune. Yeah, or you can say the 7 sevens and the 60. You can even do this because it works out perfect, because Shavuot, Pentecost, is 7 sevens after Passover. You could even say there were 7 sevens until his Nazareth, and then 62 sevens till Pentecost, the giving of the Holy Spirit. It's like there's 2 witnesses right there. But I gotta
help you make a digital layout.
Yeah, I can do it on paper, and it's like, dude, can you transfer?
I have that whiteboard program. So let me give you my email that I actually answer.
Oh yeah, and the thing.
Because I probably gave you mine in the middle when I realized my YouTube email, the Gmail one is messed up. Because I gave you my phone number. Could have texted me.
Well, here's my number.
I gotta know your number. Okay, let me put it in. I'll send you a text, because if I don't put your name in, I won't recognize it.
Same with Ryan. When we were trying to set up our thing with Ryan, I should have given you my number a long time ago. I hope you both have it now. Yeah, you can text or call anytime. I turn my phone off when I sleep. You can call and I'll never know you called until I get up. Other times my butt hits the do not disturb, and I'm sitting there like, I haven't gotten a call in a week. Oh, my do not disturb is set, because my ringer will still be on high. But no, I'm running late for lunch. The little book, in my opinion, because I don't know where it is in Revelations. You guys can look at it afterwards. The great merchants of the world will deceive the nations with their pharmakia. And we think that pharmakia, the GMO, your drugs, anything related to that, today's fake food. So yeah, you look at any ingredient label.
From Babylon.
The which ones?
Silk panties from Babylon. They're merchandise that. Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no. So this small book is your ingredients label on anything you buy. It's a small book. Oh yeah, riboflavin. Oh, vitamin 12. What the hell is that? Yeah, it and you put, and it's Cheetos or I don't know, donuts. But yeah, you put it in your mouth and it's going to taste good. They made it for you. Chicken nuggets. Oh, they taste good. Yeah, read that label. Read that ingredients label. It tastes good. Yeah, and then you're going to get sick. You're going to get all these weird diseases, let alone the ones from Egypt.
Don't give my number to anybody.
Well, I just gave you my number too. You guys can save that too. I put mine in the chat too.
Yeah, just don't give it to anybody. I'm going to give you mine too.
No. I usually text first, but...
Yeah, if you text first, I have your names saved now, so I will know it's you if you call or text. So,
and I have given people my number before. Oh, I only see the one number. I have given people my number.
That's my number.
Yeah, I got yours, Ryan. I don't see another one in there, but no, I've given people my number before, and they'll send me like videos that are like 5 hours long. Hey, watch this. No. Do you got a timestamp? I'm not going to watch a 5-hour video that some guy, I thought you'd be interested in this. Oh, what's it on? Oh, it's on the breeding of whales and
that's
how
the wrong number. I just gave you the wrong number.
Oh, is that?
Don't save that one. That's not right. So
is that Janet?
No. I'll just text you my number. Okay.
Yeah, if you got mine, just text it to me. Same with you, Ryan, man. I love you, brothers. I just wanted to tell y'all, my boss at work wants us to pray now, and I just love it. And the only guy that complained was the guy that speaks English. Nobody else. Burmese. They speak Thailand or Burmese, or it's this weird click clack. It's not even on Google Translate.
Is his father like God, or is his father his father?
When he said father, my boss.
Yeah, your boss or whatever.
Yeah, I was curious what was going to go down, because when there was school allowed in prayer was allowed in school, we divided over what the hell to say. You should Google what prayer those kids used to say in school. It's totally general. Oh, great heavenly superior supreme being.
You texted me, Jamie.
Yeah, I texted both of you.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
9.
I got it.
I sent you a D pic. Sorry, no, I'm just kidding.
I'll All I know is there was a guy playing a drinking game to Jamie's video, and every time Jamie said Mare, he took a drink. And I saw his wife posting the obituary today, so every time Jamie said Mare, it was
just do a word study. You find out it
was a drinking game, and yeah, the guy died halfway through the video, and yeah, it was unfortunate. But.
So if anybody wants to debate me, they have to explain to me,
Chris,
how that is. The
that's not indirect. There's a guy in the chat that wants to debate you. So do you want to debate Chris Lucas is the question, because you have a person in the chat that wants to debate you.
Maybe.
All right.
Ryan, you moderate? Ryan, moderate it?
Yeah, I'll do it on my channel. I don't care. You guys can do it on a bigger platform.
I said I can't control my mouth. I only said F you once, and I meant it.
You can do it on a bigger channel.
That's why I said it twice.
Banner for Truth, or if you want to keep it smaller, you can do it here. I mean, I can keep track of the time and moderate, and jump in if people get personal. I mean, I can do it too. But if you want a bigger platform, go to Donnie. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want to debate, don't debate. God told me not to debate before, so I don't think it's the best thing for us to be doing all the time. The only advantage is all the prep work you put into getting your information together is positive because you end up learning it. But besides that, God doesn't
require. I'd almost rather just make videos, and then if he wants to respond to them, he can. But the thing is, when I say he's a dishonest interlocutor, a better explanation, because he responded. I watched a thing he just put out. I went and looked since I made a thing about him after I saw that video on your thing when you played it for me. I mean, and he said a bunch of stuff that I was dishonest about. But the thing is, I really don't want to keep that going, because it's not fruitful at all. And I've really always meant the things I've said. I'm not saying anything out of anger. I'm saying what I really think is going on. And he doesn't, and I tried to have a decent relationship with him, but he just went off the rails, and I get triggered once in a while. But because I think when somebody doesn't understand your view and they think they know it's wrong because of some other perception, I think that's dangerous to do. Because what if the Adventists are right?
That's how I felt about when you made the video about me the other day. That's how I felt. You were making up things that I didn't even think. But yeah, I mean, thank you for erasing it, by the way. But yeah, I mean, if you guys are making videos and putting each other's names in the title, that's one time where I think a debate might be healthy, because I think if you debate, you might be able to just get it all out.
I'm hoping he'll respond to the argument I made, because I made a real argument. And I don't think he understands that that's an actual thing. Show me how you separate these visions in Daniel 8 and 9. He doesn't seem to even understand that part of the argument. To me, it proves the Adventist view. And so if you want, show me why that's not true. And here's the argument. People don't even know Mare and Kazon are two different words. And I listened to.
Why is it significant that they're two different words, though? Tell me why.
And then I made the video. You said you watched it.
I watched the video.
The Mare vision. The Mare vision is the 70 weeks, clearly, and the 70. It says the Mare of the 2300.
Before you keep going, what is the other word? The Konzo, or what is that?
It doesn't even say. I'm not even tying it. That's not even the argument. The argument is that the 2300 evenings and mornings, which is for later, he says, and he wants him to understand the Mare. Then it tells you the Mare is of the evenings and mornings, which is the only place that's said is about the 2300.
Okay, but hear me out too. Couldn't the 2300 be evenings and mornings, literally, 2300 days? And can't that be from that'll take place many years from now? So say 300 years from now, then that 2300 days would take place.
Meaning that's in the whole thing's in the future. Well, I would say.
Well, no, I'm saying the 2300, when it says it won't take place for many years by saying many days, I accept that.
It also says time of the end. Probably.
Can it mean that 500 years from now?
Yeah, it could mean at the time of the
2300 day event will happen, type of thing. You know,
that's what futurists will say, who also agree it's not Antiochus, because there's other people that say it's not Antiochus for the same reasons I do. So it's not just Adventists denying what everybody knew. It also says that these visions, because the cause zone is really the greater whole thing, the whole thing that's going on in Daniel. And it says that at the time of the end, those things will be fulfilled. And it says in Daniel 12, Daniel seal up the book. And then, of course, in 9:24 through 27, in the Mare of chapter 9, when it says seal up the vision and the prophecy, that word for vision there is the Kod zone. So that in other words, what Jesus does seals up the Kod zone, which is another indication that part of this vision in Daniel 8 is for the future, because that's where those words come from. Even in the context of chapter 9, he refers back to what was just said in chapter 8. When I saw Gabriel, he appeared to me regarding the Kod zone, and he said, let me show you and make you understand. Let me give you skill and understanding. Here's the Mare. What was the last thing said in chapter 8? The Mare I was astonished at, but no one understood it. And then the angel says, here's understanding. Let me give you skill and understanding. Here's the Mare, and it's the 70 weeks. And we're told right before that in chapter 8 that the Mare is, so here's the answer to your question. Why that's possible from one or two of the verses that it could be that, except for the Mare is of the evenings and mornings. It's part of it, which actually gives both visions a starting point, which it doesn't have in chapter 8 alone. And it would be, people would do well to not think chapter 8 is this block by itself and chapter 9 is this other thing over here. No, chapter 8 and 9 is a continual narrative. Those chapter breaks were added by translators hundreds and hundreds of years later.
Yeah. Everybody, that's definitely, everybody knows that. That's what I mean when I said that one thing. You tried to say that I was trying to say they're not connected. Like we all get that. I mean, yeah. We all get that part. I mean, the part that
but you know that is a principle, but it's easy to. I forget it. Anybody can forget it. It's just because you.
Yeah. Well, the point of the matter is, I don't know when the 2300 evenings and mornings happened. If it's literal, and it happened right then, or if it happened sometime in the future. So I'm not like an expert on that. I was just exegeting the verse and what words were there and what the words themselves mean. And to me, those 2300 evenings and mornings are more similar to Genesis. So I wouldn't turn them into 2300 years personally, but I can see, 10 verses down where if you tie those together, then you have the many years in the future for that same situation, the same evenings and mornings. That's the way you can make your argument.
Okay, but that's a little ambiguous because I think it's just saying it's just a idiom for that's for later sort of thing. But I hear what you're saying. You're right. It is that same thing I described as that ties linguistically the development of the idea of how they use those terms. They use the term days, 4 years, literally.
But let's be honest. That was my contention at first. Whenever they use days for years, they use what's in like the verse 25 or whatever, the Yomin word. They use that word. So if they're using
they do that. But the thing is, this is in the symbolic apocalyptic literature.
Well, that's what you're going to use as your argument, because you can't go to Genesis and say, well, it's a day, so it's 1,000 years, and the 7 days of creation is
right. That would be upside down.
Yeah.
Because the idea would be something like the text is suggesting a day, and consistently in the interpretation of this symbolic language, because everything else is being presented symbolically, the daily, it doesn't say the daily sacrifice either. It says the daily, meaning it's not talking about a noun daily and then they add sacrifice. No, the word daily, which they assume is tied to that idea of that sacrifice, the Tamid, but it's really in the form it's in a weird form. It's like, I forget what you call it, but it's like a adjective that's made into a noun. So it's like, that's why it should be translated the continual, the daily, which is a weird thing. You're like saying the jump, the jumping. It's like, you don't say that. It's a weird, and you also don't say normally evening, morning for days, because it's symbolic prophecy. So it's interpretive. It's appropriate because
but in Daniel they're using evenings and mornings. They're using days, which means years. They're using weeks, which is 7 for heptad. They're using the literal word for years, sana or whatever, SANA. They're doing it all. So it's a dangerous precedent to just say, well, because it's apocalyptic, I have the the ability to just turn anything into anything. Like in Daniel 9 in the beginning, it says years. Can I just change that back to days, because sometimes days mean years. You know what I mean?
No, but here's the thing. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to like say I'm smart and you're dumb or anything. I'm just saying like, no. It seems like you're not grasping the concept fully here. Like, in other words, like, let me put it this way: the days are presented.
I grasp. Hold on. Before you say anything, I grasp that you're trying to say the vision was for the 490 years, the 77s or whatever. So you're saying this 2300 evenings has to be after those 490 years,
or bigger amount of time.
I got that part of your argument. I'm following that part of it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't necessarily disagree with it, because I don't know when that 2300 takes place. I'm just arguing that seems to be literal 2300 evenings and mornings, days total.
Okay, so
not years.
The reason it's not to be taken literally is because it's not days, is not the word. It's evening, mornings, which is telling you that's a weird way. It's a symbolic way of saying a day. That is, normally when you're talking about literal days in the narrative, like when you just want to say literal days, you would just say something else. They don't normally say it that way. They just say yom. Like in a regular day, it would be a yom. It's the fact that it's a representative of a day, which means it's not a regular day, because they're not using regular terms for the day there. That's what tells you it's a symbolic usage of a day.
But that would have to be plural though, if it's 2300. So that's where they maybe didn't want to say yom, because they do the plural yomin, and they know that can also be construed as years.
Right, but that's the point, right? Because in literal
hold on. The other reason they did evenings and mornings is because it's specifically referring to the sacrifices. Let's be clear here. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's not.
How can you say it's not? It's
because it happens after the new covenant comes, and there are no sacrifices for sins after the new covenant comes.
Hold on. We'll go to it. But right here, like in Daniel 9, so in between where we're at in 8:14 and Daniel 9:24, they use this, Daniel perceived in the books the number of years that according to the word of the Lord, Jeremiah the prophet must pass before the end of the desolations of Jerusalem.
This is literal narrative.
Namely 70 years. Well, this is my point. My point is, you're saying it's all continual, right? Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 is continual.
Yeah, so, in terms of thought.
Sandwich in between Daniel 8:14 and 9:24, we have a literal a prophecy, literally Daniel explaining a prophecy. So the same author, his same writing style, talking about a prophecy of Jeremiah for literally 70 years using different language, just saying 70 years.
Yeah, this is literal narrative here.
But you see, it's continual writing from 8 to 9. Do you understand my point?
Yes, I do. But no one ever said, like I think I said it to you the other day. I said, yes, in Revelation, it's the same way. You have it's all written text, right? The whole book, and you have the literal narrative parts where it's like, hi, I John received this message from the angel, and then he said, look over here, and then he's like, and I looked, and then he gives you the vision. And then it goes into apocalyptic symbolic narrative, and it's given in symbols. He's just describing the vision. Then it'll go right back to, and then while I was looking to the south, and I saw an angel coming, and he said, "Oh, son of man, come up here." And I heard a trumpet blow, and then boom, he's giving you the symbolic language, and then that was all literal narrative. But when he's giving you the vision, it's all the symbols. So there's never straight symbolic book or chapter, per se. It's literal narrative, and then when he goes into describing the vision, then you get the symbols. Yes, Daniel 8 itself is not totally symbolic. It has literal narrative in it.
Yeah, but
I've never denied that. The point about talking about 8 to 9 is just that it's a continual narrative. Is it the text itself?
Yeah, the continual narrative part makes me think like, well, why is this author changing up so much? If right here he has no problem talking about Jeremiah's 70 years and using the word for years, sana, why for the 2300 is he saying it in evenings and mornings?
Well, that's how you know. That's one reason why. One of many reasons that you tell it apart. What's symbolic parts and what isn't.
Yeah, but we're only like 50, under 20.
Well, look at Daniel 1. It's clearly describing
20 verses away, though. This is 20 verses away from 8:14.
What's your point? So do you think that are you saying that it's either all symbolic or not? Because It's clearly
not at all. Not at all.
It's clearly both.
No, I'm not saying it's all symbolic.
So what's the problem then?
I'm saying the author's clearly using a more direct, specific way of saying these years.
Yeah, right here, this is clearly literal narrative, which actually contrasts the symbolic narrative.
Symbolic. It's just, but this is literally 20 verses. It's probably less than 20 verses from.
And you're recognizing that it's not symbolic because it's because.
But if it was all written on a scroll, his writing style seems to be changing quite a bit.
I just explained. I mean, you're actually making my point for me because
no, I'm not.
You're saying yes, you are because what's going on right now is that you think I'm trying to say something, make a point I'm not actually making, and then using it, trying to make a point against what I'm saying. And it's like, but you're demonstrating that it's not very difficult to tell when it's not symbolic narrative anymore. This is clearly not symbolic narrative.
Yeah, but
do you contrast when it
is? I don't understand how you perceive this as helping your argument.
Show me where the evenings and mornings is used in literal narrative to talk about regular days in a literal narrative anywhere in Scripture.
Genesis 1.
Yeah, but that's where that is the go-to that gives you what a day is. We know those are regular days because it tells you day one, and because it's within a literal narrative that establishes it. That's what I would tell people why we take the evening and morning to mean a day. Obviously, it is a day. That's what's so funny about it. You guys want to take it literally. It's like I'm not arguing with you that it's an evening and a morning. That's what it says. An evening and morning we know are a day, and it isn't day.
Making a good point too that the evenings and mornings is like language that's specifically used for the sacrifices too. It's like
you mean morning evening. Why didn't they say morning evening like they do in every single place where they talk about those sacrifices in literal narrative? It says morning evening sacrifice. Why did they flip it around here in the symbolic prophecy?
Hold on. I'm looking for
because everywhere else it doesn't use it in the order that they use for a day in Genesis 1. It's called the morning evening sacrifice. And by the way, sacrifice, the word sacrifice isn't in the Hebrew in Daniel 8. It just says the daily or the continual. There is no word sacrifice. That was added by the translator.
Isn't the word offering in there though?
Sure.
Daily offering?
Yeah.
So what's the daily offering?
I'm not sure daily offering specifically where which verse.
Yeah, I mean, I think daily offering.
I would argue that it's using.
Chris, what verse is in Exodus 28 and 29? Just because when I'm skimming quick, it's hard to find them, man, because I'm not reading. Well, just the sacrifices being evenings and mornings.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm just morning evening sacrifice.
I'm just skimming it, so it's hard.
Just type in morning evening sacrifice in the word search there at the top. They'll give you come up.
Yeah, I could just do that.
But it's morning evening, by the way.
I'd have to look at it. I don't know, probably because that's the order they're doing it in when they're doing it.
I can look it up. I have it in a.
Well, I'm sure in that sense, it is probably saying morning evening because that's the order they're doing it. But
right. So why would they flip it around here?
I don't know.
Oh, but and when all the other prophecies in Daniel are the days are years, like in the 12. And that's what's funny about Chris saying it's crazy to. First of all, Adventists didn't invent 2,300 years. Isaac Newton interpreted it that way. Many people did.
Yeah, but we can't. But he only probably had the King James, so he was probably stuck with the days translation, bro. So that's a huge disadvantage for him to be translating it from.
Are you sure?
I'm.
You don't think he knew the original language said evening morning?
I don't know if Isaac Newton did or did not, but I know that King James would put people in a huge disadvantage because it's a mistranslation to say days instead of evenings, mornings.
I thought an evening and a morning was a day, according to Genesis 1.
It is, but that doesn't mean you change what's literally written in the Hebrew to summarize.
Happens all the time. The translators do, that's what it was indicating because it says evening, morning, not morning, evening.
It's not a good thing that if it's changed, it's not a good thing.
Well, should they say it was like the examples I gave in my video where Yomim is translated years?
Yeah.
It says days and 4 months, and they translated a year in 4 months. Should they not do that?
No, they can do that with Yomim, but that's what I mean.
Why do they do that?
Well, if we're going to be consistent, though, then if that was what was meant in Daniel for them to change the 2,300 to years, they would have probably chose Yomim or used the word years. That's the problem. Like from process of elimination, it's like you're arguing that it makes sense for them to have used the least likely thing. You know, it's like the hardest thing to get to.
I think that's your bias coming through. I don't really care.
I don't have a bias.
I prefer they put evening and mornings, to be honest, because
see, this is the thing. You do have a bias.
No, I don't. I want it to be evening
you do,
and morning
because you're a Seventh-day Adventist, and this matters to your faith, that like your doctrine, your denomination.
No, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist because it's right.
But I have no bias whatsoever when I look at it, because I've never even cared about it. So, like, if any of
the Adventists aren't right because they couldn't.
No, I don't know they're not right, but I haven't seen any evidence that they are right. And when I ask for evidence to say that they're right, I see a lack of it. So that's why I don't agree with it. Bro, for me, it's why did he leave? Did he leave on purpose? Why is he leaving? We're just having a conversation. Did he leave on purpose? This, like, you can't even talk to him, like, about. I hope you didn't leave on purpose, Jamie. I don't know why. This is what's so frustrating when he leaves on purpose like that. If he did leave on purpose, it's so annoying. Steph, you can come up and hit the link. You can be next up if you want. The link is available for all people. I don't know why Jamie left. Audience, you guys tell me why this guy left. We're just having a conversation. I'm saying my honest opinion on why I don't believe the Adventist view of things. I mean, do I have to agree for him to stay up here? I don't know what he wants from me. I have my own opinions on it, and I don't think it's logical the way to go through it. And trying to talk through why it's being done in the manner it's being done, it's not adding up either. So I don't have every prophecy of Daniel figured out, nor do I have every prophecy of Revelation figured out. Excuse me. Historically, I know a lot of people have spent a lot of time on it and have figured out a good amount of it. And the Bible itself tells us about some of the prophecies, obviously. But yeah, I think he left on purpose. I have no idea why, Rudy. It makes no sense. It's not like I was insulting him. I'm just saying he said I have a bias in the situation, when between the two of us, I have no bias. If either of us have a bias, it's him, because he's trying to view it through his denomination to make his denomination make sense of it. But to me, I've never put weight into it, because I've never thought there's no verse in the New Testament telling us you must figure out the prophecies of every prophet that came before the New Testament in order to worship Jesus. It's like not a prerequisite for the faith. So I've never spent, a lot of my time trying to figure them out. I don't go to Jeremiah. I don't go to Isaiah. I don't go to Zechariah. I don't go to any of them and base my faith on if I can figure out, well, when is Zechariah 14 going to happen? Because Zechariah 14 is similarly could have already happened or might not have happened. I don't go to, passages all over from prophets to base my faith on it. It's not a prerequisite. Our prerequisite is to just trust in Jesus and obey his commandments and, do our best, to follow the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So I haven't spent this time. So if somebody spent this time, it's because they're trying to prove something, for whatever reason. They want to prove it to substantiate some of their beliefs. But my beliefs aren't based upon Daniel. I mean, my beliefs are just based on trusting in Jesus as the Messiah and trusting on doing what he said. It's a direct mission for us. It's not. We didn't get an algebra test. We got Chris Lucas. We got another Daniel expert in the building. What's going on, Chris Lucas?
Well, that was quick. I didn't think it was going to hook me up that quick.
Attaboy. What's going on, kid? You're not at work?
Well, I'm just now leaving work, and let me put my seatbelt on so I'm not driving people nuts hearing that my seatbelt buzzing.
I'll put it on because it saved my life. I got in a car accident. The seatbelt's the only reason I survived. I mean, I broke my neck and was paralyzed from the neck down and quadriplegic, but it saved my life. So I recommend always using a seatbelt personally.
Yeah, that's probably not the worst advice.
Yeah. It's got more pros than cons. I'll tell you that much. Definitely got more. Those beeping things are annoying though. I don't like when I get in a car and it has that stupid beeping thing. It's like, all right, already. I know if I some people don't wear them, so it's like I know already. You know? But yeah. Go ahead, Chris. I know you got a lot to say. I mean, again, same thing I said to Jamie. Debate wise, I don't think it's the best, most Christian, fruitful thing for us to be concerned with. Just debating each other. Can it be positive? Sure. If you guys both do research, you learn more stuff, and then you kind of get things off your chest, and you have more of a mutual understanding and respect. That's good, because right now the fact you guys like make videos and put each other's names in the titles, that's not cool. Because then when somebody Googles your channel, not Google, YouTube searches your channel, sometimes those videos pop up, and then people get the impression that you're the straw man image that you said and the other person said in the video, or they just if they're searching for you, it's not good. They get videos on other channels that are speaking negative of you. So I don't think either of you should do that to each other, because I have people that have done it to me, and it's not fair when people are searching for my channel, then they get, channels that are speaking negative about me instead of my own channel first,
Well, okay, the reason why I want to debate is basically because I feel like if you're out there in front of an audience and everyone knows, you should have brought your best arguments with you. And what I want someone to do is hear their own arguments, hear what other people actually think of their own arguments. Because it's like when they just hear me and you, they brush us off. But if you're out in front of 1,000 people, 2,000 people, everyone hearing it, and they want to hear your best argument, I mean, that's, to me, I think that it can be fruitful. I also think, if Jamie actually thinks, I got a horrible argument, which he says all the time, oh, that's just, ridiculous that you think evening mornings could possibly be sacrificed. That's just the most ridiculous thing. Or, oh, my gosh, I can't believe you think it can only be days and it can't be years. It's just crazy. Okay. If you think it's so crazy, then maybe it's something you should refute me in front of a bunch of people. That way I'm not leading people astray. It gives you you're not going to change the other person's mind. That's not what debates are for. What debates are for is to help keep other people from going into error. The people that are sitting on the fence. But I've heard Jamie debate so bad when he debated Donnie that if someone was sitting on the fence about Daniel's 70th week, well, Donnie tore him up. And it's like, that shouldn't have happened, because I think Jamie's on the right side of that. But his Seventh-day Adventism, when you start going into all the other passages to back up your argument, you defeat yourself.
Yeah, I never put too much time into it, but now that I started to look at it, I definitely don't like turning the 2300 into years, because like you said, it's like converting it twice, and there's so just from 8 to 9, like I showed, like in chapter 9 verse 2 or 3 or whatever, it's talking about Jeremiah's 70-year prophecy. So why in the same scroll is this author being so inconsistent? If he's clearly able to talk about 70 years, that was the point I was trying to make to him about 9:2, and then he's kind of dismissing it by saying, well, yeah, some of it's literal, some of it's, apocalyptic, but it's kind of important that this is not very far from verse 8:14. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the same author, and he's talking about a prophecy, and he's using a different word for 70 years, verse 9:2 here. Like he said, these aren't
right.
even in chapters in the original. This is just written on a scroll. So this author has no problem talking about 70 years with the word sana, S-A-N-A, sana, So I don't know, man.
Well, you pointed out earlier too that in later on in Daniel 8, you got the word and so the prophecy after many this shall not be until many days, and they use the word yomin at the bottom. Well, why couldn't he just use the word yom or yomin up at verse 8:14?
Exactly. That's what that was my original problem too with what his premise is because I was like, yo, mean, I saw that it does mean years in some contexts, in the plural form most of the time it does. In the singular form it means days. So yeah, why in 814 does it not use yo mean if it's trying to say years? It's kind of like it's an uphill battle to do it the way he does it. And if the only way you can get there is to say, well, it's an apocalyptic book, well, okay, then like you could just do anything then, just change everything then because it's apocalyptic. You know what I mean? Nothing matters then. If there's no rules, there's no rules. You know, I don't know what to say then. You know, if that's the only way you can get there.
Right. And I mean, let's pretend like the verse actually did say the word days in it. You still have to make the argument that you get to convert it to years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's clearly talking about sacrifices. I mean, like evenings and mornings, and right before it, he's saying that this burnt offering isn't relevant to it, you know, but it's like these burnt offerings seem to be relevant. And it talks about a sanctuary. I mean, this is the elephant in the room, too. He wants the sanctuary to be some heavenly sanctuary. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just, like, concentrate on the 2300. Well, like, you have a more uphill battle trying to say this sanctuary is not an actual sanctuary and saying it's a sanctuary that exists in heaven somewhere, you know? Because look at this. It's the same sanctuary that's in verse 12 and 13 where they're doing burnt offerings. You know what I mean?
Right, and they try to say that those in 12 and 13, that's just like an allegory thing too. That's not really burnt offerings. That's the continual, and that just has to do with the priestly duties. But that's just an allegory for stopping Christians from preaching or
that's nonsense. That's
or
nonsense.
whatever, you know. Yeah, and that's where they get the Catholic Church is going to take and trample on them for I don't know. The little horn, which is they see the Catholic Church is going to come trampling on them, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's like they are going to restore the law after 2,300 years. So that's why they read themselves into the prophecy, because when they see that sanctuary gets restored, they see that as their own church blooming and be, you know, in 1844, and oh, we're restoring the law, so we're restoring the sanctuary. It's all allegory. But if all that's going to be allegory, why not make the 2,300 years allegory? Why does that have to be a literal 2,300? That could be 2,200. That could be 2,250. Why does it have to be? Why does that? I mean, why does that have to be?
Yeah, if there's no rules, there's no rules.
Yeah, because, you know, some people take that millennial reign and they go, well, it might not be a real 1,000-year reign. It might just be like, you know, a real long time. It could be longer than 1,000 years, or it could be shorter. It's just going to be a long time. That's all 1,000 years means. So why not do the same thing with the 2,300? You know, it's like, I just got to throw all the rules out the window.
Yeah, I mean, the 490 years I agree upon because that word that they use for weeks is used for the 7 periods for the Sabbath periods, like the whatever the technical term is for. You probably know it more than me, Chris. You let your slaves go free on the 7th year.
Oh, the sabbatical. The sabbatical year.
Yeah. So that word weeks is obviously being used in that manner for the heptad for the 490. I have no problem with that, but it's like, you know, that's the problem I have is turning this 2,300 into years. I don't see any evidence or reason to do that. I see no evidence that anything on earth happened in 1844. I see those clearly being referred to as like the sanctuary and the sacrifice. Man, I'd have to hear you out more, Chris, on it because you've done tons of research on this. Like, what sanctuary? What have you figured out, or what's your theory on when you think this happened? The sanctuary thing, because
I think it happened in 167 BC with Artaxerxes. I mean, not Artaxerxes. Antiochus Epiphanes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've heard that thrown around a lot. The Epiphanes guy's name, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you have like the Jews were Hellenizing at the time. They were starting to transgress. You got parts in this, some of these verses that are talking about the transgressors. Well, that's the Jews transgressing the law. And this is a judgment God's given upon them to have Antiochus come and do this to them. because what they were doing was they were selling the priesthood. It was already becoming defiled by Menelaus and Jason and all them. They were all defiling the priesthood. And so even if you want to say that it's 2,300 days, you could still make a case that maybe from like the illegal purchasing of Jason, that maybe all those sacrifices from the time Jason became the priest, or maybe it was Menelaus, I can't remember which one, or there might be one other guy. But you could make a case maybe that from the time they took over the priesthood, if they weren't legitimate Levites, all those sacrifices wouldn't be legit either. So, I mean, there's different ways to work it out. I personally like to say that it happened and it was about 2,300 sacrifices that could have happened in about 1,150 days, give or take a few days, just because they can have various amounts of morning and evening sacrifices depending on if it's a special holiday or not. They might not have both sacrifices in one day. I can't remember if they add one or not.
So are you leaning more towards 1150 days instead of 23?
Oh yeah.
You are?
Yeah, because I think it's evening morning sacrifices. And when Jamie said, "Oh, why does it start with evening?" It could start with evening because that could have been the first sacrifice that got interrupted. I don't know. I've never figured that out, you know. But I mean, maybe that's the first sacrifice that gets interrupted. So it was evening morning, and it started out as an evening sacrifice. I don't know.
See, I'm new to looking into this, so I just started looking into it after he did his video. You know, that was honest, because you guys have been talking about this for a year almost, and I've never cared about looking into it really, but I just started looking into it. But like the Septuagint translates Daniel 8:14 as 2,400. It changes the 2,300. It's like the only translation that changes it from 2,300 to 2,400, but it says evenings, mornings, and days. So the Septuagint has all three. Like it has evenings, mornings, and days. So I don't know if I'm you know, but it also has 2,400 instead of 2,300. But that kind of makes me think more of like, you know, maybe it is 2,300 days because the way the Septuagint has it worded. I don't know.
Now, does it say? Did you say it says 2,400 of days, evening, mornings of days, or is it just evening, morning, days?
It says 2,400 evenings, mornings, and days. Like
days.
Because I was trying to look at what the Septuagint said, just because I would put some weight into that, you know, instead of just looking at the Masoretic text, try to figure out, you know, what does the Septuagint say. And yeah, for some reason it said 2,400, but it says evenings and mornings, but it also says days. So it's kind of like making it clear that those evenings and mornings are referring to one day of sacrifice. But some of the translations you click on just shows you the Greek. So you know, I can't read Greek, so I don't know how to read it. But some of them translate it to English. Here's Brenton. See, this is Brenton's Septuagint. Is it showing on the screen yet or no? I gotta.
No, it still has. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta change it because they, you know, how you use StreamYard, they changed it up. You know what I mean? I gotta.
Right.
Kind of annoying. I mean, sometimes it works better now because you know how it is. You don't have to be on the screen anymore, but sometimes it's annoying because you got to do it again. But yeah, this is the Brenton's Septuagint. I mean, there's Septuagint, all the Septuagint translations. So I went to the Septuagint because I was curious what it was going to say, you know, and see they have evenings and mornings. There shall be 2,400 days, and then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. So it has the word days, but it also has evenings and mornings. But for some reason, it says 2,400. So that's kind of weird that the Septuagint did it like that, you know. So that makes me lean more towards days instead of 1150, you know, even though they have the number wrong, you know, but maybe I shouldn't put as much weight into them because they got the number wrong, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of that because I noticed that the other day. I'd want to look at the Greek and just to see how they probably worded that. I haven't got around to it yet though, but
yeah. can't read the Greek, so when I Google Septuagint, when this pops up, I don't know. I can't do anything with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna fight it too hard because people in the past they've figured it out from the 2300 days, and people's also figured it out from the from a standpoint of sacrifices, because when Antiochus comes back from, he meets this Roman envoy, and as he's going into Egypt, and this Roman envoy gives him like this ultimatum, like, you can either we'll either fight you or you can just turn around and go back home. So he goes back home. That would have been like in June of 168 BC. So he probably gets back into Jerusalem a couple of months before what's recorded in Maccabees. And my thinking is, when he gets back, he attacks the Jews, and as he's attacking them, they can no longer sacrifice at that point because he's went into the temple and probably stopped the sacrifices. And then all Maccabees does, in my opinion, is just records the point when he actually sets up a pig on the altar and sacrifices it.
And that's for like 3.5 years or so. It's not.
Yeah, and that comes at, so I think it comes down to about 1,090 days. So you're short maybe about 60 days or something like. I can't remember if it's like 30 or 40 or 60 days, somewhere right around there. But you get those extra days made up if you calculate. Well, I mean, he did get turned back from that envoy in Rome, and if you just say, okay, it takes you at least a month and a half to travel with all those troops back to.
Yeah, you can logically see where, give or take a couple days, it can get sorted out. Yeah,
And plus, I don't think it was recorded perfectly, and it might have not been recorded perfectly just because, I mean, come on, who's going to write down history as you're getting attacked? It's like you're under severe persecution. So that could be part of the reason why it's not recorded correctly. But there's nothing to dispute it either,
Yeah, so you think it's 167, you said? What did you say?
It's either 167 or 168. I'm not really sure which one I'm leaning towards, but I mean, I just know it's either from 168 to 165 BC or 167 to 164.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, man, I never spent much time on this, but you guys have spent, to be honest, I think too much time on this, because you're just doing it to try to disprove the Seventh-day Adventists, like, because you.
Well, I'm actually learning a lot, man. So it's not just this, because when they throw something at me, I was like, okay, I'm learning a little Hebrew. If I was not learning anything, I would stop doing it.
I understand, because I have already learned a little bit looking into it. I understand. I'm not saying
it's kind of like with you and the Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, I understand. But that's what I mean. I did that for a good amount of time, and now you can, you watch my channel. I don't really spend much time on it. I've buried it unless they kind of come around me. But honestly, I could start doing a couple shows at some point. I'm not going to say I'll rule it out that I'll never do another show in the future on it, because it is a serious problem. So I understand why you want to clarify the information, because you're trying to help people that are stuck in it and believe it. And it's a dangerous doctrine, honestly. I mean, they're saying a lot of things that what I don't like about it is it's just denying that Christ went into the Holy of Holies at the end of the day. Like, if you're going to make this argument so hard that Christ didn't go into the Holy of Holies, what is pretty clear he did, like right when he ascended, like he didn't wait 1,844 earthly years to go into the Holy of Holies. Like, it's just pretty it's like blasphemous. That's all the only word I can say. It's like, borderline blasphemy to act like Jesus didn't go into the Holy and Holies, like when the book of Hebrews said he did,
Right. And here's one more problem. I mean, when you read verse 8:13, like, read that question, and when you're reading that question, do you ever think that question refers all the way back to like the ram and the goat, or do you think it just refers to the activities of the little horn?
I mean, and Daniel here, I don't see it. I don't tie this to the Day of Atonement. I don't tie it to the Day of Atonement at all.
Well, I mean, no, in 8:13, do you go, oh yeah, this question's about the very beginning, like it's about verses 3 and verses 4 and 5 when it's talking about the ram and the goat, or do you think it's just talking about verses 9 to 13, 9 to 12?
Yeah, I think it's more 9 to 12. I mean, I've never put too much. I don't know, bro. You tell me. I don't know.
Okay, well, see, Seventh-day Adventists say that question applies to the entire chapter 8, right? Like it's asking about everything. And I'm like, no, that question looks like it's specifically talking about the activities of the little horn and the sanctuary. It doesn't look like it's talking about the ram and the goat at all. So why are you tying the 2300 to the beginning of, all the way back to the ram and the goat?
Oh, it clearly looks like it's only going back to verse 9 for sure. Verse 9.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue I have with the Seventh-day Adventists, because one of the questions I asked them, and the Advent Defense League said they would look at my video and do a response before I did it, but now I think they changed their mind, because one of the questions I said was, can you show me just a couple of people that ever read that question that thought it referred to the ram and the goat?
It looks like it's talking about the little horn here, yeah.
Yeah, no one reads that with their right mind and thinks that refers all the way back to the ram and the goat. But I would like to see who else does, because I'd like to see what crazy things they wrote about.
Throw it down, because I'm just objectively reading it right now. I have no bias in this, so I'm just reading it right now. And,
I think you're one of the perfect people to talk to, because you really don't seem like you have
I haven't spent any. I have no opinion on it because I've never spent time on it like that. So yeah, I'm just giving you my honest what I think. I don't have a reason to lie about it. Yeah. So it looks like it's speaking about the little horn, and from verse 9, out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. It grew great even to the host of heaven, and some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host, and the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown, and a host will be given over to it together with the regular burnt offering because transgression, and it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a Holy One speaking, and another Holy One said to the one who spoke, for how long is this vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and giving over the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored. So, I mean, it's literally like the question here in verse 13 is obviously very relevant. I heard a Holy One speaking, and another Holy One said to him, Holy One said to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering and the transgression that makes desolate and the sanctuary, giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot? So those three things are what's the context, and that's clearly seems to be from verse 9 here, because here's the regular burnt offering, and the transgression that makes desolate.
Yeah, see, now, in me personally, I just want to try to help people exegete the verse themselves. And so, I'm not going to try to confuse people and go, okay, this is talking about the ram and the goat, because I feel like at this point I'm wasting people's time if I was to say something stupid like that. I mean, obviously, if you're reading that question, you're coming to your own conclusion. This is only talking about verse 9 on forward. There's nothing in that question that makes you think, oh, I got to go check out what went on in the earlier verses. There's nothing that makes you think that 2300 is tied to anything else but the activities of the little horn, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, you cannot make the argument. I don't know how they could make the argument that there's anything besides the little horn being talked about, because then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. So it's like the goat part is taken care of right here. You know what I mean? It's over. There you go. Goat. taken care of. And now we're going on to a next subject. Out of one of them came a little horn. So yeah, I don't see how they're reading it as it ties into the goat and the ram.
Yeah, the reason why they do that is how else are you going to tie it into Daniel? Because think about when those Daniel 9. Because think about see, that prophecy doesn't start until 457 BC, right? But that's in the Media-Persian era. That's before Greece conquers Media-Persia. So how? But they like to start that 2300 at the same starting point as Daniel 9. Well, how can you do that if you're starting it at the little horn? So you can't start the 2300 with the activities of the little horn, because we know Alexander the Great conquered Greece in 334 BC. I mean, Alexander the Great conquered Media-Persia in 334 BC. So that means the prophecy has to at least start afterwards. Right? So that means that, and then the little horn, when does it rise up? It rises up after Alexander the Great dies, because he's the first king of Greece, and then it's broken into 4. So now well, I at least got to wait till after the death of Alexander the Great, which was in 323 BC, I think. So sometime after 323 BC, that's when the 2300 could start. That's at any point after that, a little horn could rise up. But
yeah, so
but see, they got this all messed up trying to start it at 457 BC.
Yeah, so you're not getting 1844 if it starts after Alexander the Great. I see what you're saying there. If it starts at the latest 323 or at the earliest 323, then 2300 is going to take you to the year 2000. I mean, the whole 1844 thing, let's just be honest, that's a complete joke. It's not correct at all. Like, it's a bunch of people that thought Jesus were coming back. He didn't show up because they were just wrong. And then instead of admitting they were wrong, they went and made it up another excuse for why they were wrong to try to save their face, try to save ego. They had pride and ego. And they said, oh, no, the Bible says he did it in heaven in the book of Daniel. Look, this proves it. It's like, no, you were wrong to begin with. Admit you were wrong and move on. Don't start a religion based around your wrong prediction. It's like, I don't know. I've never once thought that sounded logical at all. And the main reason is because in order to take that stance, to just like beyond all this history and all these other aspects, the main reason is in order to take that stance, you have to also simultaneously argue Jesus didn't enter the Holy of Holies, which is a complete blasphemy.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the main thing I just want to help people do is just understand the Bible and how to read it themselves. And it's like, I mean, a lot of people get confused about this Daniel 8, and I don't think it's that hard if someone just tries to explain it right. Like, I mean, you at least have a starting period. Like, you might not even agree with how I interpret it, but you at least right now have a starting period of going, well, at least I know this 2300 can't start until after the death of Alexander the Great. So I know I need to at least be looking for something that happens after 323 BC. You could totally ignore everything else I say, but you should at least be able to say, I got this much to go by.
Yeah, I mean, that part seems pretty obvious. I mean, how can they not say it's Alexander the Great being described there? That seems like the most of all the people in the prophecy, that's the one that's like the clearest to me, even being a layman, not really putting much effort into it. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's describing Alexander the Great.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like even they admit it's Alexander the Great, but they still want to start that prophecy all the way back because they got to hook it up with Daniel 9. I mean, they got to hook it up with Daniel 9 and that start date, which has to be 457 BC. So in order to do that, that's why he keeps going on about the Chazon and Mare. And, there's another vision that's talked about, another word for vision that he always ignores. So he says, everyone ignores the Chazon and Mare. It's the two words that are translated vision. But there's another word for vision, and that's the vision of the 4 that come up in verse 8:8. If you look at the Hebrew, it's got notable horn, but Young's literal translation says a vision of 4. And that word vision, kazuth, Chazuth. It's it means like oracle or prophecy. That's another translation of that word.
What Daniel 8:8? There's a verse, but it's got to be in the Young's literal or something.
Yeah, I think it's Chazuth. If you look up the like a literal translation, you'll find it. It's in the same. I think it's 8:8, and it's in that same verse where it talks about and four come up. It's like a four notable ones come up or something like that. But that word for notable or conspicuous, it's actually a word vision. And the way Young's translated it, he says a vision of four come up. And that same word for vision is also like in Isaiah. I can't remember what verse.
Young's
but it's like
translation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in Isaiah, and it's like a same word he uses for prophecy or oracle. I can't remember right off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. So that might have a lot of validity then if it's the same Hebrew word.
Yeah. So, and see, what I'm thinking is there's a lot in Daniel 11 about those four horns, where it gives you a little bit more description about what's going on with those kingdoms leading up to Antiochus. And so, it seems like it's kind of like I mean, I'm just throwing that out there just because he's so hung up on Mare and Kazon and how that word's translated into vision. And it's like, well, there's one more word that's normally used for prophecy, and we know that's like and it says a vision of four, you know.
I'm not seeing where I can get the word vision from the interlinear, because the NASB is not really giving it. Like maybe they have it as notable ones or something.
Yeah, it might be notable ones, and that should be this word called Chazuth.
Yeah. Vision twice, yeah. It's only used 5 times, they say. So agreement, notable, vision, conspicuous.
Yeah, and then conspicuous, it's only used in Daniel 8 that way. So I think that's just the way they chose to translate it in Daniel 8. But all the other ones, it's either like prophecy or oracle.
Yeah, Isaiah 21:2, a hard vision hath been declared to me. The treacherous dealer is dealing treacherously. Okay, and then Isaiah 28, excuse me. And disannulled hath been your covenant. Okay, so there it's called a covenant. So Daniel 21, it says vision. Daniel 29, it says, Isaiah 29, it says vision. And the vision of the whole is to you as the words of, let me click on this to see if maybe Young's is just consistently calling it vision. I'm just curious what the ESV says or another translation. I just want to see what they say too. Can't change it over. Hold on. What are they saying here? Nah, King James calls it vision too. Yeah, NIV vision, ESV vision. Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying. So yeah, that there's definitely in Daniel, the word vision is also possibly, and not possibly, it seems like it is probable you can translate it as vision for sure in Daniel 8:13. So it's talking about a vision there too, huh?
Yeah, but all they ever talk about some Mare and Kazon and not the Chazuth.
Verse 8. Sorry.
Yeah.
8. Yeah. So there's a third word. Yeah. I don't know what. Yeah, I never get why he's making so much of a big deal about the Mare. Just before, I didn't even know what a Mare was, and he kept saying Mare. He doesn't tell people that never know what Mare means. What Mare means when you're watching his video for the first time, you just hear him saying Mare. I tried to Google it, and I didn't spell it with the H. I just spelled it Mare, and I didn't get the right word, so I was like lost. But yeah, he should clarify that when he's doing the videos on him and be like, Mare is a vision, But I don't, bro. There's so many more important things to spend your time on in the Bible than this. Like, I don't get it. I really don't get why it's become such a passion for him. And I guess it's just to prove 7-day Adventism didn't mess up in 1844. Is that like the whole point? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yes, man. I mean,
That's the whole point. Like, I'm gonna waste, instead of reading the Bible, the rest of the Bible, concentrating on all these other aspects of the faith. I'm gonna spend a ton of time just trying to justify that Daniel, aligns with my denomination's belief system. Like, okay, that's kind of weird.
Well, it's also wasting other people's time who are sincerely trying to read the Bible, and you're kind of like because I just remember I tried to read Daniel years ago, like, Daniel 9. I'm hearing all these churches try to teach me it, and it's like, man, when I'm reading it, I'm not seeing Antichrist in the scripture. And man, to be honest, I'm just like, I don't see Antichrist in these verses. I don't see what you guys are seeing. Maybe I'm just stupid. But I never thought, they were actually wrong, right? I just thought I just didn't see it, because everybody preaches almost the same way. And I didn't find out, until maybe about 7 years ago, when I'm reading the Geneva Bible and I'm like looking at the footnotes and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This wasn't always taught this way. I was like, wow, this is like the opposite the way I've been taught it, and I started looking more into it, and I'm finding out that, wait a minute, you mean most churches taught it like this? And so it just kind of, so all this is kind of like new to me, but I just keep thinking about all those times when I'm sitting there and I'm just getting discouraged from trying to understand the Bible. And I'm just, well, I don't understand that. That's way over my head. And all this time it's people teaching me wrong. And I just think about like just the damage that does to other people. And I mean, this is a nice prophecy that so many people, even secular people, think this was fulfilled. Well, they think this was such precise prophecy in Daniel 8 and Daniel 11, talking about Antiochus and Alexander and all that. And it's like, this is so precise that this had to be written in 150 BC.
They don't think that. Yeah, I've seen on Myth Vision and stuff. They don't think Daniel was written back when Daniel was written because of this. Yeah, so that just proves that it's got to be them. You know what I mean? It's like the secular people are saying Daniel couldn't have been written in the 400s, the 5th century BC because of this. So. Yeah, dude, I think at some point you gotta move on past it too, though, because you've spent way more time than I would spend on it. I mean, I know it's like a personal battle between you and a lot of Seventh-day Adventists too, but you're doing good work. You've put out enough videos now where somebody like myself could go watch them and learn and get all this. You did the hard work that now I don't have to do it if I want to watch one of your videos. It's all there for me, and you set up the path if I want to do my own research to where to start. But at some point you got to move on too. Otherwise, you're as obsessed as he is on trying to prove it. Which, again, I can only see one reason for him to try to prove it. It's just to justify his denomination. Like, okay, if you want to prove your denomination that bad, okay, but you can never prove the 1844 part. So how can you prove it? You can't prove it, So no matter what you do, you can't prove it, because what you're saying supposedly happened in heaven. But beyond that, I think it's just terrible because it's trying to act like Christ didn't go into the Holy of Holies. Of all the reasons to not want it to be true, you should, think of that. Like, if you're saying the sanctuary has to be heavenly and Christ didn't get into the Holy of Holies till then, like you shouldn't even want it to be true, because it's lowering the level of Christ's deity,
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of issues, but another reason why I'm learning this is because once I did start finding out that secular authorities, think this is even even thinks this is so accurate that they're questioning that Daniel must have been written in 150 BC. It's like now I kind of like learning as much as I can about it, just because I want to use that in case in the future I want to prove that, oh, this is a divine book and this is a good reason why you can believe it.
I can see why you would do it like that too. Then I can see that, like, you want it. if you want to try to convert somebody to Christianity, you can say, look, this is this accurate that the people that weren't Christians don't even believe that it was written when it was written, and they think it had to have been written after the fact. So I understand. Listen, I'm not saying it's all a waste of your time, bro. I'm not saying that, but I am saying me and you both know there's a limit on how much time you should spend on it, right? So you can look in the mirror and ask yourself. I'm not the one telling you passed it, but all I'm saying is when I watch your channel and Jamie's channel, the daily topic is often Daniel. That's all I can say. You guys both got a lot of Daniel information. That's all I can say. But
yeah, another weird thing about how he looks at it too is, and I just found this out today, that okay, now a lot of early Christians, I'm not going to say all of them, but there was a lot of them that used to pray for Rome. And why were they praying for Rome? Because they were told, and this is like going back to Irenaeus and someone else who was like who like learned under Polycarp, and Polycarp learned under John. So it's only like, just a little bit of ways. But anyway, they thought the restrainer was the Roman Empire, and that once the Roman Empire was taken out of the way, that this man of sin would be revealed. So they were scared about what was going to happen once that man of sin got revealed. So they would pray for the Roman Empire. That way they would keep restraining whatever it was that was supposed to be revealed. Now, Seventh-day Adventists also agree that that's the restrainer is Rome. But the weird thing is they also call the little horn in Daniel 8 Rome. And the one problem they have is they also call the little horn the papacy. So they say it's both, and it can't be both, because I was like, how can the little horn restrain itself? And I still haven't gotten an answer. Right now I got a Seventh-day Adventist like talking in circles around it. And I'm like, can you just give me a simple answer? How can it be both?
Well, like I said, when I see other 7-day Adventists on YouTube channels, they're talking about Daniel too. So it's like these guys aren't talking about Isaiah. They're not talking about Jeremiah. They're not talking about Ezekiel. Like, they have a motive. They have a reason. They have a bias for caring about Daniel so much. And, it all ties into their 1844 nonsense pretty much, right? The heavenly sanctuary in verse 14 is what they're arguing, right? Am I clear on that?
Yeah, oh yeah, you're real clear on that. And actually their whole identity of their church is tied into that, because they think when the sanctuary is cleansed, like I said, they don't think the continual, when it says the continual, they think it's the continual priestly activities that the papacy was stopping, and preventing. They don't look at it as just like the Jew. They don't look at the Jews. They look at it as like the Christians, and then the papacy's changing the Sunday, changing the Sabbath to Sunday, and so they see that as being like trampling the continual or the daily and all that, and a sanctuary being made unclean. And then it's like, oh, well, in 1844 it's made clean, it's restored. And how's it restored? Well, the Seventh-day Adventists are telling everyone about the Sabbath, and they're restoring everything. I mean, that's how it felt when this one SDA pastor named Pastor John from Angels in the Glen was on my show. When he was describing that, that's exactly what it came off to me as.
Yeah, and like Rudy's saying here, they have their own prophet and stuff. Like, they are similar to Jehovah Witnesses and other things that came out in the 1800s. They kind of separated themselves from just, other sects of Christianity. But I don't know, man. This is why I don't have a denomination, because I think having a denomination is just a hurdle that causes you to have to fight battles that none of us need to fight. Like, if I chose any denomination, there's things about each denomination on earth that I see as unbiblical or things we shouldn't do, So it's like, it doesn't matter what you identify with. If you pick a denomination, there's stuff they're doing that's wrong with it. So just identify as a Christian. And it's like Paul said, people are identifying with, the Greek people's names. This guy's Stephanus, this guy's this guy, this guy's of Paul. No, we're all one in Christ. So when you make yourself a 7-day Adventist, when you make yourself a Roman Catholic, when you make yourself a Baptist, a Methodist, a Calvinist, whatever it is, you're not one in Christ anymore. You're separated, you know? So it's like, stop calling yourself this and that, a Mormon, Jehovah Witness, whatever. I mean, those guys just go. I mean, it is bad when these doctrines come about. I mean, I won't say Seventh-day Adventists is as bad as Mormons or Jehovah Witness, but I will say there are bad things about the Seventh-day Adventists that I don't like and would definitely keep me away from it. I mean, the way they glorify Ellen White is bad in itself, you know, but the way they have to, just hearing Seventh-day Adventists, Jamie included, say that Christ didn't go into the Holy of Holies till 1840, just really, that rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I don't think I'm using a strong word by saying that sounds blasphemous to me. You know what I mean? It in my opinion, that sounds blasphemous. You know, if you think Jesus is God, how is he not able to go into the Holy of Holies? You know, it makes a man went into the Holy of Holies every year on earth in the earthly ministry, right? The priesthood, the Aaronic priesthood, Yom Kippur, every year a man went into the Holy of Holies to be, you know, the one who did the sacrifice, you know? So we're going to claim that Jesus Christ had to wait 1844 years, but on earth a man was doing it every year. I mean, give me a break, man. An Aaronic priesthood man had that privilege. Jesus had to wait. The Son of God, who God gave all authority to, like in Matthew 28:18-19, God gave Jesus all authority. Go baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like it's just, if you believe in the Trinity, it's just a bizarre thing to claim, you know?
Oh, here's one more thing. How did that sanctuary in heaven get dirty so it needs to be clean? When did it get dirty? Well, these guys never have given me a good answer for that. They never told me a starting point.
You can't make an answer for that. That's a ridiculous claim. You know what I mean? It's God's holiest of holies got dirty. Think about
well, it got restored, didn't it? I mean,
you know what I mean? That's like the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, I don't know. I try to just hear them out and go through this, but yeah, the obsession with trying to make this 1844 not be a mistake is just taking it to the point where you're willing to like lie about not lie, but twist other parts of the Bible to fit in your narrative, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. One more thing. It's like, okay, the best answer I ever got about how the sanctuary got dirty was it was from God's people on earth, and their sins get transferred into heaven. So I'm like, well, how do they
God doesn't get polluted by our sins. I know you don't believe this. I'm just saying God doesn't change because God doesn't become less holy from our sins, you know?
Yeah, see, and the only way I can even think about it, because I mean, I'm unsure what the Seventh-day Adventist was trying to say. Is the Seventh-day Adventist named McPherson? Yeah. But I'm like, okay, so is it going like through Jesus's blood? Because I mean, like, how is it getting in heaven? Because I'm trying to figure out what happened between 457 BC to 1844 AD. Something happened between there that made the sanctuary dirty. What is it? I can think of Christ getting crucified, and then our sins are transferred, and then his blood is, I don't know how that works, man. Is it through his blood that our sins are put in or whatever? But I know they're doing something where and I think one of them said, no, it's symbolic. It's dirty symbolically because our record of sin is in the sanctuary, and that's what Jesus is going through. And I said, so it's not. So I said, well, wait a minute. You haven't did the whole Azazel goat thing where you put all the sins on a Azazel goat. So where are those sins and records of sin now? Oh, well, that's the investigative judgments going on. I was like, okay, so the sanctuary is not cleansed. It's in a state of cleansing, but it's not being cleansed. But the scripture says it got cleansed, and they haven't responded back to me on that one.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the investigative judgment either. I feel bad that people have to make these things up Like, I mean, granted, it's their own interpretation of the Bible, so that they're entitled to their opinions. But when you come into like a group think about it, like, oh, my group thinks this, so now I was raised in this church and I gotta try to like look at the Bible and find these things. Well, it just becomes a path of, slippery slope where you're gonna end up stumbling, in my opinion, and you're gonna find like, okay, at this point, I'm kind of justifying something that I don't need to justify. I'm reaching, I'm twisting, I'm like how he was the revelation, the way, I mean, none of us should be like certain about how we view revelation, like especially like chapter 12 where we were, or who the two witnesses are. Like, we all can have our opinions, but none of us can certainly speak on it and say this is what it is. None of us can do that.
Well, if you have a prophet that told you that's how you can speak on it.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
I mean, because that's the only thing I can think of for them being like that sure about themselves, which they almost all act like. I mean, there's a lot of them, man, that are exactly like Jamie, and it's like they're just very certain. And I'm like, the only way you can be so certain is you got to be feeling almost 100% sure she was really a prophet.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. If you're gonna exalt her to the level of like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, I guess then you would believe all of these things because you're exalting her and you're looking at her like a biblical prophet. But I don't look at her like that at all. I think she said a lot of cuckoo things. I don't see her predicting one darn thing. I don't see her saying this is going to happen in 10 years and God told me and then it happened. I don't see any of that. I see her.
Well, she did say the church she was gonna get persecuted. People were gonna start to question her, so she got that promise.
Yeah. That's such a hard one. I don't know what I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna call myself a prophet, and then I'm gonna predict that people aren't gonna agree with me. It's not very prophetic, I'm gonna predict that people won't agree with me. Yeah, no shoot, it's like, oh man. But yeah, man, it's whatever. I'm not trying to pile on, one denomination. It's just, we were talking about this Daniel prophecy and trying to get it to, fit that narrative. But again, my biggest problems with it are just, the ramifications of it are bad, saying Christ didn't go into the Holy of Holies. I would never want to say that. Just uttering it, I feel like is blasphemous almost, like not almost, it is to me. I don't believe it that at all. I believe Christ descended into heaven and went to the right hand of God and went in once for all of us, like the book of Hebrews says. By his blood he went in once and he doesn't have to do it again. He did it once, so where did he go? Like, they admit he went into the sanctuary. So what do you mean he stopped and God was like, no, you're my son, you're not allowed in the most holy place? Like, what?
Yeah, wait till 1844, bro.
Yeah. God was like, sit in the waiting room till 1844. Like, what? But do they think God exists in the same type of time we exist in? You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bizarre concept, man. It really is, and I don't get why people, but I do get it, because where it started was they thought Christ was coming back, and when they messed up, they just didn't want. They were human beings, and they had pride and egos, and they had told their neighbor, and their neighbor, they cared what their neighbor thought about them, and then they had to pivot and say, no, listen, I'm still a smart guy. I still know what I'm talking about. It's just, it happened in heaven, so it's like, it is understandable when you put it in the lens of like human beings are going to act like human beings. And, if you're in a little group and you don't want to be embarrassed and look like you were completely an idiot or failed or whatever, you're going to pivot and try to do something to save face. And, but for other people to buy into it hundreds of years later, that's pretty nuts. I mean, you can appreciate like keeping the Sabbath. You can appreciate other aspects of the denomination, but you shouldn't have to take all of the baggage,
Right. See, I think the reason why that church got to grow was it came around a time when there weren't TVs, there weren't radios, there wasn't the internet. You couldn't easily go research it. In fact, I mean, you could plagiarize, and it was hard for people to catch on because how can you catch it? If this book isn't too popular, if you don't have a bookstore in every city, or every corner.
Everybody can't read.
Yeah, I mean that dude. It's not like the literacy rate was like the best either, and books readily available. Like, I mean, right now it's like, dude, we can read all kinds of free books, and search them and everything, man, no problem. They didn't have that back then, so it's like their whole denomination was bound to fall apart once people could start talking to each other and be like, well, I found this out, but I mean, man, like who learns all this? There's a lot to even learn about their denomination because they're not very open. And when you finally do start to learn it, it takes a lot of time. It's so weird. And they're like, well, that's not what we were really saying. And I'm like, but then you start to learn, no, wait a minute, that is what you're really saying. And so it takes like so much time, and most people probably wouldn't invest that time. So they got to get away with this for like a very long time. I mean, even me, I was, even in this day and age, for 10 years, I was friends with a lot of Seventh-day Adventists who started realizing, like, oh, it ain't just one little thing, it's a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised on some of the things that, I've heard defended. I'm surprised. I think if I was going to call myself a 7-day Adventist, I would agree with some of the stuff, but I'd have no problem disagreeing with other parts. That'd be true if I called myself any denomination. I wouldn't blindly defend everything the people, say is attached to it. But
right. Well, hey man, I gotta drop out here, man, because I just got home. My kids are up. I can hear them screaming, so I don't want all that in the background.
Hey man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm gonna change the subject and kind of wrap the show up now pretty soon anyway. So thanks for coming on, bud. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, man, it was really good talking to you, man, and yeah, I really like how your show's coming along and everything, man.
Hey, we're trying, same to you. I've been watching some of your stuff, but yeah, I'm trying, it's a work in progress. I got to do more prep work before I go live and not just always, depend upon open panels. So I'm going to start trying to improve on that. But, if people come on, it works out. But when I'm not, it's kind of, not the best. But thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, later, guy. But yeah, sorry, Stefan. I hear you, man. I'm sick of Daniel myself. Jamie obviously brought it up earlier, and we kind of started talking about it. And it wasn't me that brought it up, so I don't like it either. It's a redundant subject, and it's kind of hard to prove either way. No matter where you land on it, it's like you can't really prove it, especially if you're arguing for something to happen in heaven. But it's not a big deal to me. I've never thought I needed to prove anything in Daniel to be a Christian. So yeah, I agree. I gotta move past it, because to be a Christian, you just need to, believe in Jesus, obey the commandments, and believe in the Father and the Holy Spirit, and do what we're supposed to do by helping people and spread the word of God, and going through the Old Testament and predicting every prophecy. That's Some of these things are for God to decide on his own time and when he wants to do them and however he wants to do them. Just like Zechariah 14, that's a tough one. When you look at it, it sounds more like people are going to be, physically going to, Israel and keeping a feast, the Feast of Booths, I believe. And, there'll be a pot. And so it's very, ancient writing style, Zechariah 14, but it can be fulfilled in a more spiritual sense. I mean, again, if you look at the Old Testament, a lot of Jewish people will read certain verses and try to make arguments like Jesus hasn't come because people haven't beat their swords into plowshares and stuff like that. So, you always have to read the Bible and be open to the fact that, what you interpret as a prophecy being fulfilled and what God interprets as a prophecy being fulfilled are two very different things, because God's saying it in a spiritual language that requires, a greater understanding than what we have. You know, God could be talking, more of, beat your swords into plowshares, talking about peace in the spiritual sense, in the spiritual realm. Yeah, that's definitely true, Stefan. It's 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 clearly, you know not a topic I care about very much, but unfortunately, Jamie's pretty passionate about it because it ties into Seventh Day Adventism. But yeah, I don't. If anybody can go on my show and find me bringing it up, I mean, that's probably happened once or twice recently, but I've never put much effort into it because it's not something that's gonna, determine my soul salvation or not. So there's more relevant things to care about, more things that we should try to be doing. But yeah, guys, I mean, I started the show just out of boredom, and I was hoping for some fellowship. I'd like to have you on sometime, Stefan. It'd be nice to get to know you, hear where you're coming from, and your background, because you seem to have some good comments that I always I like your insights on. So it would be nice. Uh, well, yeah, that's a good point too. It doesn't happen very often. I know what you're saying here too. It's just typo. I still have yet to come across anyone who changed their minds on any subject discussed on YouTube. That's pretty accurate. It's a very low percentage, to say the least. It's a very low percentage. The percentage of people changing their minds and doing a whole 180 is, probably under 1%. The percentage where you can kind of, see where people are coming from and maybe learn one or two small aspects, that happens more often. I mean, I'm pretty rigid in some of my beliefs too, so I'm no better than other people on some things. Like, I don't know. I was gonna actually talk about the resurrection with Jamie. I don't know. He left abruptly. He always leaves abruptly when we talk about some of this Daniel stuff, but or Seventh Day Adventism in general. But I was gonna talk to him about the resurrection because he has very different resurrection concept than I do, and I don't know. That's a good topic for Christians to discuss because it seems like there's a wide range. Some people are, very set on a bodily, like just like the body you're in now, resurrection, which I don't agree with. I don't see it as, we're going to be in these same type of bodies. I mean, spiritual, and nobody says the exact same body for clarity. I mean, I'm not saying anybody's saying it's the same exact body, but it seems like people are trying to say like we'll be resurrected like Jesus was, which Jesus was in his exact same body, just in a spiritual, better form of it. So I don't agree with that because I think there's too many issues. Like, what age will you be? Noah was, over 500 years old. Is he in a, Abraham was in his 90s when God chose him. Is Abraham 90 years old forever? Yet somebody that dies at 7 years old, they're 7 years old forever. Like, is everybody in a 25-year-old body? Like, do we just pick like the adult prime of our life body? Like, I have a big what about little infants that die? What about aborted babies? What about Siamese twins? What about people that were little people, short people under 4 feet? I'm not trying to use a derogatory term for whatever the dwarf or whatever term is, not a slur. What about all these types of things? What about transgender people that wish they were a different sex? Is God going to put them in the same male or female body forever to have them limited to that? Like, I'm not really clear on what. I don't think any of us can have an exact answer. What are we going to be in if we're blessed enough to make it to heaven? What type of state? like I see angels and I see, physical forms being something that will do exist. But I also see verses where it's like, the righteous will shine like stars, and you know, these beings are capable of traveling in ways that, we don't travel in these, flesh in the flesh. So it's a tough thing to understand, honestly. I mean, Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, people use that for a bodily resurrection, but Paul's actually, to me, saying more so like, well, what type of body? A kernel of wheat, or it could be this, or it could be that. It's basically, and then the conclusion is basically, well, whatever body God decides to give you, So I don't think God's going to turn somebody into a tree. I don't think you're going to be a tree forever, but I don't know. When Jesus says nobody will be married, but you'll be like angels. What does that mean? Are you going to be? Because when we think of angels, do we always put them in the human form, or do we put them in the form like Ezekiel? When he says you'll be like an angel, we mostly want to say, well, it'll be like a human angel form, like Gabriel or somebody that comes to visit. But that's also, them visiting on Earth. They're putting themselves in human form so they can communicate with somebody and, make their point. If they came as a turtle, the person wouldn't listen to them. So I don't have the answer for it. I know Scripture can be read different ways for different, people, but I'm not one of the people that is, positive on it at all, and I definitely wouldn't argue for like my body that I'm in now being something I'm going to be in permanently. I mean, I don't know. Lazarus got resurrected. Christ raised, a man's daughter from the dead. Christ raised somebody else. Christ raised three people from the dead: Lazarus, somebody's daughter, and I think a man's son or something. But yeah, all those people they got raised from the dead, but are they going to be in those bodies forever? Is Lazarus in the same body forever because he got resurrected in that, in the verse, or is it more metaphorical for the fact that God will raise our spirit? I don't know. I take it more as God's going to raise your spirit. Psalm 78:39 says, the flesh is a breeze of wind, and it's here today and then gone tomorrow. So I don't know. There's a lot of verses for each side of it. I don't want to go through the whole study and look at all the stuff right now by myself, because I'd rather have somebody else giving their position on it too. Especially since I haven't prepared all my verses. I don't want to just do it halfway either. But like Psalm 78:39 is a relevant verse. You remember they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. And, sometimes wind's used for spirit. So we don't know if it's, being metaphorical here and saying a spirit that passes and comes not again. I don't know if that would make sense. I think it's more using wind as a metaphor, but wind is the same word. Ruach is the same word for spirit sometimes. So it could be, a wind that passes and comes not again, meaning like a spirit that passes and comes not again to the flesh. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways we could all look at all these things. Yeah, the disciples definitely resurrected people. Paul resurrected a person when he fell out a window, saying his life was still in him in Acts 19. Yeah, I've never heard of that guy, Stefan. That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, none of us have the exact answer. I try to limit what I'm gonna like totally stand on for afterlife topics, because you can only get so much from reading the Bible. You can't make too many arguments that are just like, okay, I'm not able to be open minded about changing my mind on this, because you have to be open-minded because you're likely wrong. I mean, what God's going to do versus what you think is you're probably wrong. You're more likely to be wrong than right, especially considering if you compare it to what God's actually going to do. So you definitely want to, have these theories, opinions, but you should definitely do it in the most humblest way because, again, compared to what God's actually going to do, you're going to get a lot of this wrong on whatever you predict's going to happen. You know, oh, we're going to be dead for this amount of time. God's going to raise us. After He raises us, we're going to get, this, and this. And, well, compare that to what God's actually going to do. And I guarantee most people aren't going to get 100% on that test, on their theories and predictions. I guarantee most people are going to fail that test pretty miserably. I know I am, so I'll speak for myself at least, but I think other people should recognize it in themselves too. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't have too much. Yeah, that's also a unfortunate aspect of it, Stefan. You're right. The counterproductive nature of having these discussions sometimes makes it where it's almost not even worth it to have the discussions because instead of leading to like a conversation where we each learn from each other, which is the goal, it leads more into egos, turning into wars over egos, and we each have to be the smartest in the room, or we each read the Bible better, or we know what the word meant in the interlinear and the other person didn't, or this person knows what Greek is and this person doesn't know Greek. So the guy that knows Greek's the smarter person. And oh, this PhD said this, this scholar said this. So you're totally right on about that, Stefan. That, unfortunately, sometimes these conversations just expose all of our own deficiencies and our own egos, and they're not as fruitful as we would like them to be. But sometimes when we all can exercise discipline and patience and love and mercy and understanding, we can have the conversation and we can gain something from it. Sadly, that isn't likely to be the majority of the time, but it's something I'm striving towards and hoping for, because the only alternative is to not have the conversations at all. And that's kind of an unfortunate state if we can't even have these conversations to try to go through these subjects, because we all do have questions about it. What is going to happen after we die? We all would like to talk about it because sometimes it can help somebody get through a fear, or sometimes it can just help people grow in their faith, to know their loved one is in a certain state, or either way. I think we have the reassurance just to believe in God, and that's the rest will take care of itself. God will take care of the rest. So, but yeah, I don't want to continue on without any guests. So I gave it another 15-20 minutes by myself here without Chris, and unfortunately no one else came. It's very understandable because it's 5:45 on the East Coast right now, so that's where I'm at. So I appreciate everybody that's listening. I hope to do some more interesting shows in the future. I'm going to try to, like I said to Chris, get a couple topics together, so there's some preparation and a direction for the show, and it's not just us up here rambling. But resurrection of the dead. Try to think of some other topics. That's one of them for sure, though. Speaking on that, going through some verses. We'll find some other similar topics. It is always nice to go through these, prophecies and stuff. But at the end of the day, God's gonna, have a totally different view. Again, Jewish people will deny Jesus because they'll say that certain prophecies aren't, fulfilled in the most literal manner. So that right there is a lesson for all of us to know that, we know Jesus is the Messiah is the Son of God, has fulfilled these things. So we have to read the Bible through the lens of, we can't be hyper literal. So, but anyways, I appreciate everybody that watched. So take care of yourselves. God bless. And God willing, do another show soon. And love your neighbor like myself, and love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Just try to remember those three things. And may the Lord bless you, keep you, and have a good day. God bless.